Join me for Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Do we have any public here today? I don't believe so. Okay. Very good. All right, we'll get right into it then. First on the agenda is the Shawshene School Assessment. Do we have an assessment report, Steve?
We sure do.
Excellent.
Rob and I met with Mr. McIntosh and Jenna Lusko, who's the business manager, about the Shawshene Vocational High School, which, as everyone knows in the room, serves the communities of Burlington, Bedford, Tewksbury, Wilmington, and Billerica, and currently has, for the next fiscal year, 1,295 students in new enrollment. The Shawshene operating and capital budgets are funded through an assessment to each of the 5 member communities that I listed above, largely but not wholly driven by the number of students attending from each community. The district's chartering agreement defines a formula to calculate the assessment to each of the community members from the 3 components: the required minimum contribution, the regional operating agreement, and the capital contribution. Each year, the superintendent and business manager put together a budget that is reviewed and approved by the Shawshene Valley School Committee. Once approved, the towns are assessed their portion of those 3 values using a formula that comes from the district's chartering agreement. The assessment is basically a one-line number, bottom line number for us. The total assessment to the town of Burlington in FY24 is $2,976,385, which is 11.6% increase year over year. The FY23 assessment was $2,667,214. This year's required minimum contribution is $1,971,209, which is up 5% from the previous year. The regional operating agreement portion is $842,941, which is 22.5% year over year. And then the capital contribution for Burlington this year is $162,235, which is up 55.64%. And then we are sending 2 less students this year than we did last year. We had a total of 128 for next year. So the major drivers, the major drivers in this budget, in the operating portion of the budget, included a new part-time English language learner teacher and board-certified analyst positions, columns and steps for the paraprofessional unions whose contracts are settled through FY25, COLA increases for clerical, cafeteria, and other non-union employees, which is settled through FY25 as well. There have been inflation in the costs of the materials that they use. Being a vocational school, they use a lot of building and construction materials. Specific examples included copper tubing, PVC pipes, and red bricks. The one-to-one computer initiative, which was started during the pandemic, on grant funds, is now transitioning to the operating budget because the grant funds have started to dry up. Escalators in their healthcare and transportation costs, addition of DESE mandated ELL department supporting 20 to 30 students, and state allocated minimum allotment of additional Chapter 70 aid as compared to other communities. 2 major drivers in the capital budget included a $475,000 replacement for 2 non-structural walls which are in need of repair and could collapse and cause some additional damage if they do, and then $183,600 worth of maintenance requests on the 50-year-old building. However, the Shawshene did receive about $450,000 in competitive grants. $336,650 for an auto body spray booth, $100,985 for a social emotional learning, $11,250 for genocide education, and then $4,500 for MyCap guidance career program. One of the other things that we did ask about was the E&D reserve fund, which sometimes the excess and deficiency fund, which you can consider like a free cash account equivalent on the town side. It's for use if there's emergencies, is currently not certified at this time. The school is working to get that certified with the state, and it's approximately $1.5 million once it becomes certified. The subcommittee voted 2-0 in favor.
Thank you. We have with us Tony McIntosh, Superintendent. Oh, yes. Dr. Connie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to pay it forward. I want to make sure I take a minute to say that Burlington students have two great high school choices for themselves, Burlington High School and Shawsheen Vocational Technical School. Tony is a pleasure to work with, and he's my fourth superintendent now from Shawsheen. So I just wanted to, take a little personal prerogative to introduce Tony. Tony, the Ways and Means Committee of Burlington is incredibly supportive of schools, and I'm sure they will work with you closely. Tony and I work together, again, to provide our high school age students the best possible program that they can have. So again, Mr. Chair, thank you for humoring me, but I wanted to, as I was so warmly introduced by Charlie Lyons so many years ago, I wanted to, again, pay it forward and introduce Tony McIntosh to the Ways and Means Committee of Burlington, and he can introduce his team. So if you were calling him up, again, Tony, welcome to Burlington.
Excellent. Thank you. Come on up, Tony McIntosh, Superintendent, and Jenna Lasko, Business Manager for Shawsheen.
Shall we pull that table out?
Yeah, if you could help get that set up, that'd be great.
This one, Roger?
This will make BCAT a little, well, watch out. This will make BCAT a little happier with the camera operation, I think.
Again, thank you for that great welcome, Superintendent Conti. It has been great, great experience for me to meet the 5 other sending superintendents in the first few months of my tenure here. And I agree. I think all of our sending communities do a great job of offering a variety of different opportunities to students. And I'm excited to be here and talk about some of the things that we do and some of the things we'd like to do moving forward. So thank you all. And I'd like to introduce, this is Jenna Lesko. She is our business manager.
Great. Welcome
Thank
aboard.
you. Thank you.
Great to have you. Would you guys like to add anything to what Steve said?
I think Steve did a good job summarizing. The one thing that I will throw in there, if you compare us to other vocational schools in this area, most of them got significant bumps in their Chapter 70 aid. Shawsheen got a total of $38,000. When you look at Whittier, you look at Neshoba, you look at Greater Lowell, they were getting $800,000, $1.1 million. Greater Lowell got $2.1 million increase in their Chapter 70 aid, and most of their budgets are up between 5.5% and 7%. So I just want to throw out there that, again, if there's questions, and we have more data around that, but I know we're here on the same night as Burlington Public Schools, but we also run a little bit of a different program, so.
Great. Okay. Do we have any questions for Shawsheen? Chris?
Just curious, on the Chapter 70 money, why are you not on par with the other communities? Is there some specific reason behind that?
So it's all based on the community demographics. The state has a whole index, and like a wealth index, and it's based on property tax, business income, personal income growth within the communities. They look at the makeup of the student body. They base some of the reimbursements on special student populations. We don't have the same demographics that those other schools do. In talking to some of the other sending communities, they've run into similar things. I know the town manager from Tewksbury shared with us that Tewksbury's increase was the $38,000 as well. So a lot of it's based on the ability of the state's determination of the ability for the communities to pay for.
So basically, it's a formula the state's using, and unfortunately, you kind of fall
We
on the
fell out of
back
that
end.
range, yep.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Sonia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Question for you, or maybe for the subcommittee. So the free cash number, or what's the account cost?
Excess and deficiency?
Efficiency. When does that normally certify for Shawshing?
So last year it was certified June 6th. We've been trying to push that through to get it done sooner this year. This is one of those processes where you submit the stuff, they look at it, they come back, they ask a couple more questions, you answer those, they ask a couple more questions. So we don't really have a hard and fast timeline for when the Department of Revenue is going to certify that, but we are trying to be proactive and get it done. We'd like to get it done quicker than it was done last year. Whether that
I'm
happens.
intrigued by that, like, just out of, is that now money that you utilize? Do you offset some of the capital things that you're using when you use that, or is it more so like a Ways and Means Reserve kind of a thing in our world, right?
It's not like a Ways and Means Reserve in our kind of it, because that's just an operating budget transfer to transfer. It's more like a free cash, so money that's not expended at the end of the year can go into the excess and deficiency fund, and because they can't go back to their member communities during the year, they're allowed to carry some of that balance over to a certain percentage.
I'm just
It's-
intrigued by it. So now, do you
One-
use it for capital
one-
going forward, or?
The cap is 5%, so 5% of our operating budget can be carried forward. There have been instances in past years, if it's certified early enough, you can use it to offset the upcoming budget. Again, ours is not certified at this point in time, so when our committee voted on our budget,
You couldn't
couldn't
use it.
include that, yeah.
Understood.
And it
Is this-
wasn't used in FY '23 either. The last time we used it was FY '22.
Understood.
But is this the normal time of year for that to get, because normally our free cash is certified about October, November timeframe, so it's kind of, the June date is kind of interesting, because they had used it in the previous years to offset some of the capital budget.
It was submitted last October.
Okay.
Now, we've also, and I'm sure people have heard, we've also had some delays in getting Chapter 70 numbers out of the Department of Ed this year, which again drives all of our funding formulas and our assessments to communities. My guess is that there's something along that line that has kept the Department of Revenue from finalizing some of those things. It's mere speculation on my part, but.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Chris?
I'd like to know a little bit more about the ELL program that you plan to set up. So it looks like it's 124,000. Is that set up for one full-time position to start?
Yep.
And then how you're going to work to support those students as they integrate into the tech program?
So again, just to back up a little bit, Shawshing never had a formal EL program. We had, the Office of Civil Rights come out and say that this was something that needed to be implemented. Last year's budget included a half-time position. Didn't fund any of the technology and software and reporting type infrastructure that we needed for the program, so that's what a lot of the requests in this budget are. We've realized that is a full-time position. We only have, I want to say 7 or 8 active EL students, but then we have another 18 to 20 former English learners that also have to be supported and tracked, and we end up working with them as well. So depending upon what the incoming freshman class looks like, we may be able to roll through FY '25 with the current staffing level. If we see a big spike in our class of 2027, I believe it is, the incoming freshman class, we may have to look at adding another position to that next year as well.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It may be here, and I didn't see it, but one of the things I'm interested in hearing, again, if it's already been out, what are the numbers looking like for the number of students that are coming from Burlington this year, or that you're anticipating versus where we've been over the past 2 years? I'm curious about what the participation rate is headed towards trends.
So, I mean, I can speak to our numbers for FY '24 are based on the October 1st enrollment numbers in 2023. So October 1st of 2023, the state takes a snapshot of enrollment for all our sending communities, and that's what they base the FY '24 budget projections on. We're looking at 128, I believe, for next year. From Burlington. Based on the October 1st numbers, we had 128 students from Burlington.
Okay.
I believe there's only 1 or 2 open admission spots for the upcoming freshman class.
For the whole class?
For the whole class. So that would be an additional 36 students that Burlington would have. Now, again, I don't have the numbers in front. I don't know how many seniors are graduating, and then how many freshmen are going to come in behind that. But Burlington, if you look at our regional agreement, Burlington has been allocated 10% of the seats since that agreement was established. And that's right around, I mean, if we have 1,300 students, 10% would be 130 kids. We're at 128 on our October 1st number, so I think we're pretty consistent.
Pretty much using the full allotment that we have on a regular basis.
Yep.
Very close.
Yep.
I see. And the other thing I wanted to know, if you could, are there any programmatic changes that are coming in terms of skill sets, career, that sort of thing? You've been introducing some over the years, and I'm wondering if there's any more going on there.
Are you talking about specific shop programs being added?
Shop, IT, anything that's related to the industries that you want to prepare people for to go into subsequently. I mean, the world's changing. Just curious if anything was new there.
We don't have any plans for FY '24 and probably not for FY '25. One of the things that we're currently running up against is just the footprint of our current building. In order to open another program, we would have to close one of our existing ones, and there's a whole process with the state to do that. You can't just, we can't just decide this year that we're not going to run it in the fall. We'd have to run out all of the students currently enrolled in it, so it would take us 2 or 3 years to open up a spot to potentially open a new program.
Have you identified any candidates that you think we should pursue that we haven't yet?
One of the things I've talked about, and I talked about this in my interview this time last year, and I've talked to the school committee about it, is I want to see us add some type of science-based program. So there are Chapter 74 programs for biotechnology. There's Chapter 74 programs for environmental science. Again, coming in from the outside and kind of looking at the offerings we have, I think that's one piece that's currently missing. And I think it would kind of diversify our offerings, and I think that it ties in with a lot of the industry need and a lot of the driving forces in this area.
Yeah, I would think that would be a very lucrative area. Are there any programs that you're considering closing because they're not current's the wrong word, still in demand enough?
I think all of the programs that we have are in demand. As far as an industry standpoint goes,
Yes.
the thing that I think that we need to look at, and again, this isn't something that I would do my first year, this is something I want to gather information on over a period of a couple of years, is student demand. Just because there's job opportunities out there in those particular industries, if kids aren't motivated and attracted to those programs, at some point in time, it's going to make more sense to close something and open something different that we can garner more student interest.
So are any of the Vogues offering life sciences type?
Yeah.
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 That sort of puts you at a disadvantage, I would think.
Not every, I mean, there's 47 different Chapter 74 programs. There's no school in the state that offers all 47. So we all kind of have our own little à la carte menu of what we offer. But again, coming in and kind of doing an inventory of what's there and kind of trying to look and see how to expand upon that, that's one thing that kind of jumps out at me. Another thing that doesn't currently exist, but I would love to get involved with as we move forward, is renewable energy. I've been advocating at the state level for a couple of years now that there should be some Chapter 74 program that focuses on that. And again, if that's something that comes online, I think that's something that it would be smart for us to get involved with as well.
The state should be, I think, I would have hoped, be more sensitive to the fact that in this sort of Cambridge, north of Cambridge suburban area, the life sciences are investing a ton of money in all kinds of operations related to those industries, both lab space, early manufacturing space, that sort of thing. And I would think it would deny you the opportunity to place students locally in some of these internship type things. That would seem like a pretty big penalty, even from the state's point of view. But what schools do provide that around here?
I know Minuteman has both biotech and environmental science. I know Greater Lawrence had a biotech program. I don't know if it still exists there or not. And I mean, I'd have to look. I mean, if you go to Essex, which Essex is a little bit of a different school. It's an
Right.
ag/vocational school. Essex also offers a lot of those programs. The last time I looked, I want to say there was only 9 or 10 schools across the state that offered biotechnology. I want to say 12 or 15 of them that did the environmental science, environmental technology piece.
Hey, thank you. It'd be nice to pursue that, I think. Thank you.
I just wanted to add one clarification here. Steve reported this correctly, but in the budget book, you might think it's a 5.5% increase, but that's based on not quite an apples to apples comparison. So the correct increase is 11.6% from last year's assessment that we had.
Correct.
Okay. Have other questions?
Motion to approve.
All right, so this is for Shawsheen assessment of $2,976,385. And we have everyone present, so we can do this by a show of hands. Those in favor vote raise your hands if you're in favor. Opposed? Abstain? All right, very good. That passes 11-0-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was
Thank
great,
you.
great to meet all of you, and I look forward to working with you for hopefully many years to come.
We look forward to that.
Me too.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right, let me just get this vote here. All right. Next, we have the Burlington Public Schools operations budget. Do we have a subcommittee report, Steve?
We sure do.
Great.
Before I start, I'd just like to quickly review the way that the Burlington Public Schools operating budget and budgeting process works. Earlier in the budgeting season, I had sent a draft budget in March that had a 6.9 year-over-year increase over fiscal '23. The draft budget included all the new requests for positions with justification from its proponents, the principals and department heads. The school committee reviews all the requests with principals and department heads in school committee meetings during the budget season. They like the community to have transparency in what those requests are. Prior to the school committee budget public hearing, the superintendent with his staff prunes the budget to fall within the operating budget guideline that was set for the various years through cuts and reorganizations in the portion that is over the budget guideline. And then once the school committee officially approves this budget, the school department publishes the list of addendum to the budget, and that's what I sent out last night. So in fiscal '24, the public Burlington schools operating budget is $61,917,897.04. You can't forget the 4 cents, which is 4% over fiscal '23 and 0.25 over the guideline. The reason for the additional 25 basis points over the guideline is that there is a newcomer academy request that includes 2 new FTE positions for a total of $146,052, which is included in that previous number. The Newcomer Academy is essentially a program that addresses the needs of students who have experienced interruptions in their education and have come to Burlington both holding a full-time job and attending school. They are primarily working this full-time job to send money back to their families at home, and they need the positions to satisfy and provide programming that is appropriate and for that particular audience or that particular group of folks. In addition to the newcomer academy, there are 8 new FTE positions in the operating budget and 4 additional positions which are being converted from various levels of part-time to full-time employees. The new positions include a social worker and adjustment counselor, 1 at Fox Hill, 1 at Memorial, a math specialist at Francis Wyman, a special education instruction aide in Marshall Simons, and also a special education teacher at Marshall Simons, strength and conditioning coach at BHS, board certified behavioral analyst, which is going to be system-wide, and then also a systems and network analyst in the IT group, which is also system-wide. And then the 4 positions being converted to FTE is a team chair at Marshall Simons, a psychologist at Marshall Simons, a world language teacher, and also a grade 6 reading teacher, all at Marshall Simons. The non-salary budgets were mostly level funded, but there were some budgets with some notable changes that are worth calling out. The in-service training was up 34.16% for $134,965. And that had introduction of the big Ideas math curriculum, open science grant being ended and converted into operating, and then new copiers transitioning to leases. The library is up 16%, and that's for $20,000 for a new CS program for all, which supports pre-K through 8. And this sounds actually really cool because they're getting some new equipment such as drones, robotics, AR and VR headsets, and Spiro robots with the consumables to support it, and some software gaming subscriptions and professional development for their staff. The Student Information Office is up 44.37%, but a total of $44,500. And this is for the introduction of the Open Architects software package, which allows them to provide real-time data and metrics through dashboards based on student data. They're targeting attendance reports first, but then we'll branch out into other areas of the data sets that they collect. From a transportation perspective, that particular budget is up 5.367 for $80,890. There's additional charges that are based on contract terms that increase in the CPI for the transportation budget. And then this is the last year of the contract, so they'll be opening for bids at the end of the fiscal year. The school committee budget is up 6.32%, which is for legal costs and postage, which would accommodate the contracts being up for renewal at the end of the year for negotiation. And then Marshall Simons was up another 10% for $12,475 for copier renewals. The subcommittee voted in favor 3-0.
Great, thank you. We have Dr. Eric Connie, the superintendent, and Nicole Kosh, the business manager, with us today. Would you guys like to add anything to that?
Again, I'd like to add gratitude, so I'd like to thank Mr. Moran and the Education Subcommittee for spending all the time. We do have a very detailed budget, and it's a lot to get through, so Mr. Moran, thank you for your time. The detail that goes into the budget comes out of Nicole's office. They spent a lot of time on that, and I think there's been great improvements in that document over the years, and hopefully you're seeing that in the data that you're seeing in the review. We also have Bob Cuna here, our Director of Operations, when we talk about capital projects, so he's here to help us there, and I believe we have 2 incredible school committee members here with us as well. So Mrs. Monaco and Mrs. Bond. So again, Mr. Moran did an excellent job. We met what seems like a long time ago to discuss guideline. We all agreed to work with a 3.75% increase to guideline. The process that we have currently in place is everyone wants to see, without any restrictions, what people need, which is why the budget we get in at first, which we would call the superintendent's budget, is much higher than the guideline. In prior years, I would sort of moderate what people would put out there for people to see. I don't do that anymore. People want to see what people need. So we started at a 7% increase and worked our way back from there. The vast majority of the reductions came from new position requests that came out of the various departments or schools. So we basically needed to reduce the initial ask by roughly $2 million, sorry. That's where we ended up. We are adding some new positions, even though our enrollment is relatively steady. Where we're adding positions is in the student services area. We're also reallocating some positions. Our high school enrollment next year is going to be down from what it normally is, and our middle school enrollment is going to be up. We have some larger classes in grades 6, 7, and 8. So we may see some salary shift from, again, a place like the high school into the middle school, but we're also seeing a higher need for supporting students, and I'm sure if you're all paying attention about the mental health needs of students increasing and making sure students are prepared to learn when they're there. So Mr. Moran mentioned some support in regards to school adjustment counselors, social workers, a lot of the positions that didn't exist when we were all in school, and I can hear my father, what do they need these positions for? I sort of get that sentiment, but again, we are trying to create an environment where students are ready to learn, and I think some of our students need support in doing that. What is the cause of that would require a much longer meeting than we all have tonight, and I'm not sure we would reach agreement of any of us. But we are seeing higher needs in regards to what they call social emotional learning, mental health in our across our students. So our initial budget again did come in at 3.75. We have seen our student population change. So again, I've been here. Now, this is year 15. When I first came here, Burlington is just a wonderfully diverse community. We believe that is a real strength. I believe it's a real strength. It allows our students to experience a global world that they will be living and working in while being locally educated. It's phenomenal. But when I first got here, the second most frequent language spoken at Burlington in the public schools was Gujarati. And currently, our second most frequent language is Spanish. So what we've seen is the patterns of families moving into town have changed. Our Spanish-speaking students who are coming in are much less formally educated. So we have a challenge where we have a college preparatory high school. We just had a presentation in Massachusetts. We're organized into college preparatory high schools and vocational high schools. We have a college preparatory high schools, and we have many students who we are obligated to educate coming in with very little formal education. So we might have a 15, 16, 17-year-old, I'm going to call them young man, who has, I'm going to say, lived an adult life already, coming to Burlington, working full-time and trying to come to school at the same time, and might have been formally educated to the second grade where they came from. Placing that student in a trigonometry class or a AP US history class or any sort of class, you can imagine as being very difficult if you placed yourself in that same place. So the program that we're asking for that took us over guideline is to really serve those students. And I just want to give you some numbers to back that up. And our teachers are doing an incredible job. So I just want to make sure I say that. And please, in my comments, don't take this as a deficit conversation. These students add incredible richness to our population. And believe me, their work ethic is second to none. And I think they provide great models for the rest of our kids to see. And so, again, many of them are leaving school at 3 o'clock and working until 12 or 1 in the morning, and then expected to be back in school the next day. So from 21-22, the school year 21-22, to this year, we've seen our, just at the high school now, just at the high school, our percent increase in English learner students, we went from 35 students to 62 students. So we increased 77% of our students at the high school. 41 of those students would we consider beginner learners or beginner English learners. So they have very little English language and they need true support. It's rare that Burlington High School has a dropout, and I'm saying that because of the support of the community and parents. We also work very hard. This year, we have 7 dropouts already to date, and we can say those dropouts are from the population of newcomer students who are here. We don't have the right programs to keep students in school. As I said, what is much more typical for us is to get students to a diploma, have them either go to a 2 or 4 year college, the military, or the work. And again, we're very good at that. We're not very good at educating these students yet. So we'd like to bring on some teachers to have some flexibility in the day to really try to prepare these students for high school and to learn, and to really be more flexible than we allow most of our students to be. So, you know, is it okay that their school day starts at 9 or 10 o'clock? Well, if they're working till 1 in the morning, that may make sense for them. So again, it's things like that that require some flexibility is why we're looking for these positions. And these are members of our community. They may not be recognized by everyone, but they are here. They are working, again, very hard, and their numbers are significant. So, so I really appreciate that the support. I did meet with the town's financial team, with Nicole. Usually we put our most at-risk learners, our most volatile learners, in the accommodated account. And the advice that we got from town, which is, again, is fine, was that this should be an operating budget expense because we're going to be carrying it forward. So again, I don't like to come in over guideline, but I think the school committee supported us adding these 2 positions for this particular need. And again, whether we put it in the accommodated and that went up a slight amount, or we came in, again, I think a reasonable amount over the 3.75% guideline that we were given. Again, we can take it out and put it in accommodated. I don't really care, but we need these positions to work with these kids and to try to keep them in school. A high school diploma for these kids can really change their lives. And the irony here for me is, if you want to talk about students, like the Shawsheen has an excellent culinary arts program. A lot of these students are working in kitchens in our community, and they don't have access to that training or to that program because, again, Tony's just building up his ELL, his English language learner supports for those programs. So we are educating, again, we're educating these students in Burlington at Burlington High School. So again, if you are unaware of this population, they all are coming from about the same 50-mile radius in Guatemala. So they are coming as a community, and a lot of the workers tend to be 15, 16, 17-year-old young men, because the journey is very difficult, and so they also need a lot of support in many other ways. And again, I just think our staff, my staff at the high school, is just doing a great job providing emotional support, language support, academic support, and then working with the other agencies in town to make sure the students are here and they're welcome. I went along, and I apologize, but I really want to advocate for these students, and I don't want them to be invisible in Burlington. I want them to be a visible part of our community, because in all of the wonderful restaurants, hotels, other amenities that Burlington has, many of the folks who are providing the hard work that make those businesses function are the kids that you don't see. So, so thank you for indulging me. Something Mr. Moran said that over the last several years, we've asked our principals to level fund supplies and materials. You all are purchasing supplies and materials as individuals. Inflation is hitting us as well. I know we're here to discuss fiscal '24, but I do want to say we can't continue that moving forward. So fiscal '25 for us is going to be a year when we have to make an adjustment to supplies and materials after several years of not doing that. And all of our employee contracts are going to be bargained next year, which will impact fiscal '25. And as Mr. Moran mentioned, our transportation contract is up. So it's sort of a perfect storm for us. So again, just a little preview of next year. But again, I hope you will support our budget coming in at 4%, again, which is slightly over the guideline that we had discussed in the fall.
Thank you. Do we have questions?
I do.
Chris?
Just curious, of these, the newcomer students, do you anticipate further increases in the next 2, 3, 4 years?
Yes. So I expect an increase in our newcomer population as a subset of our overall English language population. And our overall English language population is up 40% last year to this year. So again, not all of our students are Spanish speaking. We also have, seeing an increase of students from Brazil, so where our Portuguese speakers are also increasing again. And we're also seeing, again, continued movement in from our South Asian student population, which again has been a part of Burlington for a very long time. But what we're seeing, sort of the newer student populations seem to be from Central America and Brazil. So yes.
Is this relatively a newer phenomenon?
Again, Burlington has always had incredible diversity. We have 57 languages spoken in our district currently. What we have seen is a shift of where students are coming to us from and the amount of formal education they've received prior to coming to us. So again, if a student is formally educated and just needs to learn a new language, that's a different academic task than if a student needs to learn a new language and has no formal education. So it's just a different challenge for us.
Do you have any graduation rates of these particular students?
They've only really been entering to us probably for the last 4 or 5 years coming to us. I think we've been successful with several students, and they're great success stories. Again, they're incredibly hard workers, but they just tend not to, we need to develop a different pathway for them to be successful than our typical 4-year high school experience that most of us have had, I'm sure, at this table.
Thank you.
Roger?
What kind of support are you getting from the Department of Education and from the State House? It seems like a place where both of those organizations could provide either guidance and/or funding to support the issues.
Mr. Riggs, thank you for the question. I think they will provide some money through sort of Title I funding for students who are on free and reduced lunch. I think there are other supports like that. There's really no specific funding that I can think of. Nothing substantial. I think there's a Title VI, so there's some federal money for that. These populations aren't necessarily new to Massachusetts. They're typically, though, they come in through gateway cities, Chelsea, Fitchburg, other places, but we're just seeing them now coming to Burlington. So again, we're needing to serve them. We've also seen, again, if you read today's Globe, there's a housing shortage, and so there's an increase in the number of homeless families. And so we've had 30 homeless families now placed in Burlington at the extended stay. And again, we are obligated to educate the children that come with those families and then provide transportation for those children. So the options for the child are either to remain in the school district where they've been enrolled. So if a child had been enrolled in Woburn, this is just an example, and they came to Burlington, and and they wanted to stay in Woburn, we would then have to split the cost with Woburn of transporting that child back to Woburn. Or, because that child now resides in Burlington, if they wanted to enroll in Burlington schools, we would also need to provide a spot for that child in Burlington, and then also provide transportation for that child as well. So we're seeing that pressure as well here. And again, hopefully those families will be placed. It's actually easier for us if they are permanent students than if they come and go. That's a harder challenge for us. And again, I don't want to have, again, a deficit conversation. These children have amazing lives. They add to our student body. They're just looking for some stability so that they can learn. Just one of the children I met from the extended stay is a 9th grader, and he speaks five languages. So he's an incredible kid, incredible life. He honestly just needs to be in a place. He walked into our library and said, can I read, like, are these books for me? Can I read these books? Just an incredible story. And so again, we're just seeing more need.
All right, thanks.
Sonia?
Mr. Chairman, Dr. Conti, thank you for that, and thank the school committee for having the vision of supporting something like that. I think your statement about not all students learn the same is a very valid statement, right? So the traditional high school and the way it's built is not perfect for every child who's learning, right? So my question for you is, does Youth and Family Services have any services that could also, I believe you need whatever additional staff you need to support it in the high school, but can Youth and Family Services help as well? And do they have any services that could tie in with the high school, the department here, in Burlington?
Yeah, again, Christine at Youth and Family Services has been working closely with Chrissy Concession, our Director of Mental Health. I believe they co-wrote a grant, and we're splitting a social worker with youth and families, a Spanish-speaking social worker, because we also have to make sure our support in departments are multilingual now too, to work with these families. So that is one instance where Christine has been extremely helpful in terms of partnering with us on a grant to provide a new counselor that we're splitting the cost with the schools, and my understanding is that counselors will be multilingual.
Perfect. And then a follow-up on that is, I know that there's a night program as well, correct? Is there opportunity for these students, if they're working by day, to attend the night? And would there be somebody there who could help them in an ELL situation, or is it just a day program that we're funding?
Ms. Rollins, I think one of the things that we are thinking about is, because we've had such success with our evening program, and again, Jill Graham, who runs it, does such an exceptional job, that we are really, in the staff at the Evening Academy, which is what we call our alternative program, and we actually partner with the Simon Corporation, who owns Burlington Mall. They have a Simon Youth Foundation, and the Simon Youth Foundation's primary mission is alternative high schools. So it's called the Simon Academy at Burlington, is our evening academy. Sorry, long answer. But we are looking to take the success we've had there and create a day program, and that's why we need the additional staff, because the staff we currently have are teaching during the day and then extending their day and working at night, and most of the students we are trying to reach now are working from 3 to 1 or 3 to midnight. So again, we'll have two populations of students. The Evening Academy students right now are required to have at least, I think, 20 to 30 hours of work a week, so they need to be sort of employed relatively full-time, and then they're educated at Burlington 4 nights a week. Burlington High School, I think, from 6 to 8:30. This might be that in reverse, where they're coming to school during the day on a moderated schedule and then working full-time at night.
Brad?
Thank you. So you said the magic word, you've probably heard me rant about this before. I hate seeing budgets come in balanced on office supplies, and we're doing that again this year, and that's unfortunate. But I understand the financial pressures. So we've been warned about making that up next year. So, got a big picture question for you. So this is actually the third superintendent I've worked with. I've been on Ways and Means for so long. When Dr. Conti first joined us, you probably caught me ranting at Mr. Mercier about, when I joined the committee, schools and towns expenditures were about the same. And it started the school started to advance faster than the town side. And I finally advanced in my thinking and realized that there's no reason those two things should be correlated. You know, they're not gonna, it's like arguing that the fire department and the library should have the same budget increases each year. So I've matured, I've understood. But so this is my 17th year doing this. I've never seen a school budget that's come even $1 under, and here you all this with me, Ms. Monaco. The school budget has never come in under guideline, not even $1 under guideline. And I'm trying to understand why, and I'm going to give a hypothesis and see what you think.
To be fair, they have returned money occasionally.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh. Excuse me.
Never mind.
That's good. Never mind. But, so I understand they're fixed costs. So the bulk of the budget is salaries. You've got facilities to maintain. And you also have a lot of unfunded mandates. I remember the state requires a certain number of English, ESL teachers as per population. So a lot of this is out of your hands. But is the big picture that we as a society we are in a transition period, a decades-long transition. A lot of the services that you said your dad was saying, why would you need this position or that position? I'm getting to be that age myself. But we're understanding the process of education. There are things we hadn't understood systematically, over the years, and so we're making advances and we're learning how to take care of the kids and guide them and work them into the job market more effectively. So are those the sorts of drivers getting us through the transition? Am I just dreaming that perhaps in 10 years, once we're over the hump, we'll have all the systems in place and it'll kind of be just steady state taking care of the contract increases? Is that the correct understanding?
No.
I would say with, I'd say, again, with respect, no. I guess, Mr. Bond, I would say that if you think of my job as the chief child advocate in Burlington, sort of frame it that way, there are lots of services in a much more homogeneous community that we were used to coming up. So schools now are being asked to feed children who may have some food instability. We're asked to provide health care. We have to get students vaccinated in physicals. We're running a health care clinic once a month at the middle school. We have to provide mental health support. We have to provide medical assistance. Our nursing staff has increased. So again, I think just the role of schools has changed. So you're thinking back maybe to when we had a singular function, and I think if we had a singular function, our jobs would be maybe more predictable. We're now trying to educate students with all different learning styles and abilities. Many of those students weren't educated in public schools before. Now we're obligated and we have a mandate to educate them. So I just think the landscape has changed and the expectations have changed. And I am not judging whether it's good or bad. I'm just telling you that it is, and I'm not sharing my personal opinion here, but I'm just saying it's more complex. We have more adults involved in getting students sort of through the experience and prepared to be citizens, workers, and contributing members to society.
But to the ARC, so I think you're supporting my hypothesis, but to the ARC, once we get those more complex systems in place, can we expect, is it unreasonable to expect a leveling off on the growth?
I think if things don't change, but things are changing, all the time. So will the technology change? How will the apps that now write themselves change what are due? Does that make teaching English easier or harder? I mean, like I said, I'm not sure. Does high school continue to be 4 years? Does the work week go from 5 days to 4 days? There are some states changing schools to
what you asked for.
to be 4 days. So there are states now that aren't even supporting public education in the same way that they did. So they're just providing money and you can do whatever you want with it. People might say that's a great thing. That's sort of all out of my control. I just know the students who we receive. My job is to bring in the most talented staff to get them through a diploma, and that's really what the task is. Why do we come in at guideline? Because we do. The two women sitting behind me would have asked for a higher guideline if they could have. And if we got a 5% guideline, guess where my budget would have come in? It would have come in at 5%. And so I had to turn down a lot of requests that are truly needed here that I think would make sense. But we are trying to work within the financial guardrails that this committee is slated to work at, and we're cooperating.
Thank you. Disappointed that it's coming over guideline, but I think I understand. I will personally view it as we're working through, and perhaps it's a permanent transitory state, but I will vote to support the budget. Thank you.
Chris?
I have a couple questions to follow up to. First of all, thank you for all that lengthy time on Thursday. As I explained, I do enjoy going through the budget. So one of the things I'd asked about was the $2,300 for the BEAM program, and was informed that we're phasing the program out. So I guess the question I'm left with, if the Burlington Public Schools thinks that it's not the right decision to continue with that, why is the funding for the program still in the budget?
Because I think what we were trying to do is we made a commitment to the students who are in the program.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we would have one more year of following that commitment. And I don't really think that decision has been finalized either. So it may be that we make a change. And I don't know how to say this really well, so I'll just try to say it. I think the $2,300 bill for all of us would be expensive. It's something I'll certainly look at, but it wouldn't be that big an adjustment either way for us to continue to spend that or not spend that. So again, this is a budget document, and we'll try to make it work. So I don't know what we're doing. The reason that we are looking at BEAM is not all children had access to it, and open access is something that's really important for us. And so I do think that's a program that we do need to look at.
So one of the things I would want to look at under the memorial budget, it does look like there's a large calculation error on one of the teachers. Rather than getting the $2,000 longevity stipend, it looks like it was $200,000 longevity stipend. I did double check the math, and it looks like it might be in there.
So I was wondering, we would have really happy memorial teacher, and I was wondering why.
Yeah, yeah, so I would check that, because I did it quick, super quick, but it looked like it came out to roughly that. It's the 5th grade teacher.
Okay.
And it's just that I think it was supposed to be a $2,000 stipend, and it's a $212,000 stipend.
We'll look at that.
Okay.
It's under guideline.
There you go. This is only my second year on Ways and Means, but I remember the instructional coach position was up in the middle school, and the original budget was $67,000. And so looking at this year, I noticed that those are now up to $127,000, and they're going from coaches to directors. So is there a reason why the positions are going from instructional coaches and now being categorized as directors? And is that affecting the person who's currently in that position as well?
Again, I think the position was proposed and budgeted as a Unit A, a teaching position. And when the candidate that the principal wanted to hire came in, I think that she had more experience and was going to be more expensive than we had budgeted. Also felt like the principal wanted that position to do some professional development outside of the teacher contracted year. So we have one salary in one of our units, which is a 187-day salary. The director's salary is a 200-day, it's a different contract. So felt it was a better fit for what the principal wanted to do. So I think that position evolved from what we initially budgeted to where it sits now, which is it's a longer-term position. And again, the title comes sort of with the days, with the contract.
So one of the other questions I asked was, we have about $763,000 of grant-funded positions. When do we have the information on when we can expect those to be potentially rolled into the budget over the next couple of years?
Again, Nicole will correct me, as always, but we have many different types of grants. So I think the grant-funded positions are typically, for us, would be entitlement grants, which means we would get those grants every year. An entitlement grant would be as opposed to a competitive grant, which we may not get. So the example of an entitlement grant would be our, 94-142 would be the federal grant for children with disabilities. And again, the federal government never meets its obligation fully from what the law says, but we do get some money from the federal government every single year to educate those children. Please.
So
Now the correction.
no, that was all accurate. Just some of, I think what you're getting at, we did add some positions with our COVID funding. That funding ends September 30th of 2024. And there are 3 to 4 positions, but we've worked over the past few fiscal years to phase those in so that we didn't end up with a large structural deficit once those funds expired.
Perfect. And then last question. So I think this is more of a wish or request. So obviously I understand when we need to cut positions and respect that you're cutting positions that aren't student forward positions. But I think with having all the, being able to see all the sausage being made, I think it might be, at least my wish would be, how many years have these positions continued to be requested? It might be interesting to know, is the Fox Hill assistant principal been in the request for 5 years? I think that's just good for us when we're making these calculations and considerations to see some of these of, then positions that may be the first year request is in there, then makes the budget. Okay, that's more important because X, Y, Z versus something else. So I guess that's just a request or a wish of mine. Would love to just see of, how long some of these positions that are on the wish list that don't, when we have to then get a little more technical, we might want to be looking at that.
We can incorporate that information.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Just to make sure we have the right numbers on that, if I understand correctly, it sounds like you're adding 8 new FTEs and there's 4 conversions from part-time to full-time? Is that what happened?
Yes.
Okay, and it looks like on your adjustments page, there are 16 additional FTEs that someone wished to have that didn't make it happen. Okay. Megan?
Thank you. I want to speak in favor and support of Newcomer Academy program. I'm really happy that Betsy addressed this need for students to support their families and learn and make it through high school and hopefully to graduation. I also have a question. I think I heard this correctly, but correct me if I'm wrong. Dr. Conti, you mentioned that there was going to be a social worker split with Burlington Youth and Family Services. I see that as request number 26. It's a system-wide, studied my acronym, social worker. And it's listed as being cut. So I was wondering if there were 2 requests and one was cut and the other is staying, or if that was just a mistake.
I actually think that the grant was written, but it's not actually going to, we thought we might get it earlier and then need to use local dollars to carry that on, but the grant actually isn't going to start until next fiscal year, so we can use the grant money to get us through fiscal '24. You'll probably see that position added in fiscal '25. So the position is coming, we're just using grant money to fund it for this coming fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
And just a quick question following up on something Chris asked. Are the schools receiving any of the ARPA funds?
ARPA directly, no.
Okay.
You mean that the town received, or?
Right.
We did have an allotment, and again, we're phasing that out, as Nicole said, ESSER, but we have a lot of different acronyms. So the schools received ESSER funds, and the town received ARPA funds. So that's what I would say.
But none toward, there's no cliff, nothing toward salaries.
No, again, the one thing the town did that was incredibly generous, so thank you all, was they did use the ARPA funds 3 years ago, I think, or 3.5 years ago, to purchase laptops for all of the teachers all at once, and that was around $500,000. So we're going to have to build in a sustainability program for those computers, because they're going to age out eventually. So thank you all for that.
Thank you.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Oh, Frank.
Sorry, folks.
No, that's okay.
Further
I
discussion?
thought you were going around. Thank you. I'll only be brief, seriously.
Hopefully you
Time me, it's 8:07.
To beat Brad's time.
The first thing I'd like to ask, it's a difficult question, but it has a short answer. You gave us the superintendent's budget, and then you did all the pruning, and we ended up with the budget that we've got, the 4% budget, right? In the superintendent's budget, there was a whole list of, like, I don't know, 15 things that went, no, chop, find another way, blah, blah, blah. Did you rank, in your mind at least, the priority of all the things that didn't make it? Are they ranked in some manner?
In some manner, yes.
Okay. The thing that we haven't done to tie into what we're not doing and how long it's been going on and whatnot is the assistant superintendents at the elementary level. And Chris is not in on this, okay? That strikes me as, because the world has changed, what goes on in the buildings has a lot of social, emotional, integration of activities in people's cultures and whatnot. And it seems like we're hiring positions, as much as we can to help out in the social, emotional, mental health support and development. But not having an assistant superintendent in an elementary school seems like a dead loser to me in that respect, because that's a lot of what they could do.
Are you saying superintendent or principal?
I'm sorry, wrong word.
You meant
Principal. I meant principal and assistant. I didn't mean to confuse you. So I wonder about that. And it's something that maybe someday we'll find another way, or you're gonna get to it. But it always stood out to me. So that's the first thing.
Mr. Monaco, I think at some point it's Sophie's choice. And again, I would prioritize people providing direct services to students. You could argue that assistant principals provide direct services to students, and I think at some point they would. It is a priority. You're seeing it all the time. Clearly, a part of a budget is a communication document and a values document, so I'm clearly communicating that we need those positions. But we're also working within the guidelines that we have. And in no way do I want to communicate that the community isn't generous with the public schools. The community is very generous with the public schools.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot like that.
You can, and I probably like people better than others and say, you get your staff, and no, I don't do that, but I'm just saying. Again, Mr. Monaco, I would say, where is the critical need? We have 2 salaries that we're asking to work with newcomers. Could those 2 salaries be largely funding
This would be
assistant
incremental.
principals?
This would be more.
No, but I guess I'm saying that's a choice, but if we look at our student data, where we have the greatest achievement gaps, where we have the students who are struggling the most, is where I'm applying the resources that we have. And those needs have changed, Mr. Bond, to your point. these wouldn't be the students even 5 or 6 years ago that we would be struggling with. There's a change. So it's really hard to make a school budget as predictable as everyone likes. And I think that's sort of the thinking behind giving school committees limited fiscal autonomy, because if I had to come before town meeting or for this board every time a student moved into town or there was a change, they just couldn't function. So again, I think there's some method to the madness, but again, Mr. Monaco, I'm not going to argue with you. I think elementary assistant principals are top on my list.
That's actually the question. Is it high on the list?
Yeah, very high on my list, and they have been asked for, I think, 5-6 years now, and we actually had an assistant at Memorial that we ended up reducing. So we would actually have to, it would be a restoration, not even a new position from where we've been.
Right, so to the whole point of, we're over guidelines, but, the guidelines don't necessarily account for what's not gonna make it. They don't, in fact, until you put the recipe together. And so some of these things that don't make it are serious. They really are, in my opinion. And that's something we need to keep in mind. And schools probably are gonna get more expensive than the operating side of the house, no matter what, I believe, just because of the way the world is operating today. The other thing, are we gonna take the accommodated account separately? Separately. So I have an accommodated
Just
question.
talking operating.
I'll wait for that one. On the operational side, one for Mr. Kuna. Last question, easy. Someone had asked why our utility costs hadn't gone up or something, and we're under contract for natural gas and all of that. But I'm wondering about is, do you keep track of what the solar panels on the high school, what they're worth to us? Are they helping in any significant way?
Well, thank you. I don't have the data in front of me. I will say that Nicole's office and her personnel does keep track of it. I do request copies of that to review, but it is offsetting
Is it a
some of our
winner, do you
bills.
think, or not worth that much to us?
It's definitely worth it to us because we pay nothing for the actual panels themselves. We do pay a fee to the company in the form of tax credits. Maybe generation credits is the proper word instead of tax credits. But the offset for the panels is definitely a win for us.
So going forward, we're gonna be doing a lot of construction here in the not-too-distant future. And so we're trying to make green buildings and all of those really good things. We're gonna have we have a ton of roof space already on these buildings between the middle school and the high school. And I'm wondering if we could get a significant boost out of using more solar energy generation. Just a thought. I don't think we've looked at it in a while.
If I can comment, so we have looked at it, my team has looked at it. There's still a push for solar generation, but what a lot of new companies are pushing now is battery generation, right? So having on-site batteries and storage power, so you have a smaller grid that's now powering battery cells and then pulling from the batteries themselves.
But do you
So we're
charge
actually
the battery from solar energy?
No, you charge the battery. You could, because we have it, let's say, at the high school, so we could charge it from those solar panels. But even if we didn't, we store non-used power from the grid in those batteries and then pull from those later at peak times.
All right, so I don't want to get, you're past where I even thought about it. I don't want to get too wonky on this, but we're spending a lot of money to heat and cool these buildings. I mean, it's expensive. And so anything we can do with alternative energy that saves us money, not just be greener for the sake of being green, but actually save money, would really be worth looking at, I think, if we can do it.
If I could just add one more comment. So supporting a high school or even supporting a renovation would actually be a huge input for us because the efficiency of the equipment that we're using in the older buildings, right, is where we're using a lot of our energy and losing a lot of our energy as well, too, so.
All right, thank you.
Just for our clerk, we have Robert Kuna with us. What's your title, Bob, officially?
The Director of Operations.
Director of Operations. I knew it was Operations something.
And can I state for the record 814?
What's that?
Can I state for the record 814?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, Frank, he's calling.
Well done, Frank.
7 minutes.
Under an hour, Frank, well done.
Yeah, that's because he had to come up to the table. That took at least 30 seconds.
That was a real time sink for us. Chris?
Sorry, I think this is tough for me because I'm a big proponent of the schools. I'm a big proponent of what we try to do here, but I'm noticing a $200,000 budget discrepancy here. And if this is true, then actually technically the budget is under. It's technically would be a 3.65 roughly. Would be under what it is in there. You know, and part of me would say, okay, well if this $200,000 is there, well, then I would want the, assistant principal and the stride teacher, that's almost $200,000 right there, and now we got 2 more off the list. So I think that's just a concern of mine, because if we then bring this forward and vote on it and then bring it to town meeting, and this is still in here, then that question's gonna come up at town meeting as well.
Nicole, do you want to take a moment to ponder that while we ask a few more questions?
Yeah, I don't have my laptop out there, so let me.
All right. All right, we'll stall.
I can take longer. All the time you need.
I did want to throw in another couple questions here. On the free lunch program that you have going now, is that 100% reimbursed by the state or federal government, or?
That's
Or did I let Nicole go just as I thought you might know that?
Again, we're not paying for food yet, so is that correct?
It is correct right now, yes.
And is the expectation that that will continue indefinitely, or is that
That's
the
a-
life at some point, or?
That's a state, Massachusetts, the state has to make that determination. There are states that have continued to provide the food at no cost, Colorado, I think, being one of them. Massachusetts hasn't made that determination yet.
Oh, so we don't know if we're good for FY '24 or not on that, or?
Again, it's my understanding that the current, it's my understanding that the current free lunch program will end June this year, and that has not been set for next year.
It is.
It has not been set for next year that I'm aware of.
So we don't know for next year, and so that just means we would have to start
Oh,
charging
it's
or
on
working into the budget.
3/11 Memorial.
Okay, and
Grade 5 teacher.
just one other thing,
Oh, 205.
so it looks like we have about 354 ELL students, which is over 10% of our population in the school, right? So I'm curious what's the longevity of those students? Are they, once they're in, are they in till they graduate, or are they coming and going after a couple of years, or what's our expectation of how that works out?
All the students are screened when they first join us, and then it depends on their need. So if they are beginners, they get more intensive ELL services than if they can function. I think research says it takes a student who's a non-English speaker about 7 years to sort of acquire the language in a way that makes sense. Even if they have social English, so even if they can survive in the playground, for them to learn academic English takes many, many more years. So there are students who we have who are on that count that are just monitored, so maybe not receiving any services at all. So, Mr. Eiler, I would just need to know, not every student gets the same amount of services, and students do assess out of requiring those services over time. We have much more success the younger the student is when we provide those services.
But in terms of them staying in Burlington, I guess, I understand they may or may not be in the program after a while. Would they typically stay in Burlington for quite a while? Or?
Again, I think it would depend on the individual student and the family. What I would say is our Central American and more recent newcomers are much more mobile than our prior populations, is what I would say. So, and I am stereotyping horribly, so.
Yeah, housing probably drives a lot of that.
Sure. Okay. All right, good to know. It just sort of sets expectations to how these programs might go in the future.
210 over.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. Are surrounding towns creating newcomer academies similar to ours, or how are other districts to serve these students?
Mr. Wojcik, it really depends on the communities. We've been partnering a lot with Woburn. Our clinic at the Marshall Simons Middle School is in partnership with Woburn, and that's from money that Senator Friedman provided for us to spend, because the students have to be obviously fully vaccinated in order to attend school. So they're seeing a large influx as well. Then they tend to have more Portuguese-speaking or more Brazilian students than we have. But we've talked about working together and creating a Middlesex League newcomer program because many of us have similar groups of students, and we're thinking that over time it might be advantageous for us to collaborate on an academy. It's just going to take us a while to do that.
Understandably, thank you.
So I'm just getting a little
Okay?
feedback from the budget analysis that, and this makes total sense, that you want to just double check the numbers and make sure where that 200K comes out. And then, if it's okay with you holding off on that motion.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll come back to that, and I think, well, we can decide on what the motion is, but my sense of the choices would be either the current number or subtract 200K if there's a math error, would be the two choices we're selecting between, is that?
The current number or reducing by 200?
Right, since it sounds like there might be 200 in there, it isn't really supposed to be in there, potentially, is that?
Again, Mr. Chair, I'm saying something that I probably shouldn't, but we have a committee member. I would assume if there were $200,000, for instance, still in the budget, that the school committee would want to have a voice in whether that stays and how we would spend it ahead of your vote, is what I would believe, but I don't want to speak for the.
Assistant principal.
So I wouldn't want to speak for the committee, but again, so we could get that done in time for your vote if we were to find it.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
we look forward to reworking the numbers there. All right, so you're going to go back and.
This has never happened.
My first mistake.
I can't imagine how it's going to turn out.
Thanks to Chris for finding that.
Well done. Anything else for tonight?
Like budgets.
On the operating budget?
I was going to say there's a lot left to go.
Just on this side. All right, so we'll table that and come back to it, and it sounds like we're down to a small number of choices of what you're going to come up with on that. Thanks for looking at that again. Okay, why don't we move on to the accommodated account for special education? Steve?
So the special education accommodated budget covers the tuition expenses that are hard to project on a year-to-year basis for the students who need special education. The district is required to provide these services to students, to those who need them. The district is unable to, for a variety of reasons, it's hard to project the number of students who will move in or move out of the district on a year-to-year basis. When we have move-ins, that increases the cost of our potentially could increase the cost of our special education budget. The special education accommodated account covers out-of-district special education tuitions, transportation for both in-town and out-of-town special education programs, the lab tuitions, which is a program between Lexington, Arlington, Burlington, and now I'm going to forget the Bedford and Belmont, thank you, and the Burlington Early Childhood Center. The total budget this year is $14,202,037, which is up 10.3%. The major drivers that are increasing this budget include 2 new residential placements and a new day placement in out-of-district programs. State raised tuition rates for out-of-district placements by 14%. The addition of a position for Director of Special Education Programs, and a new development skills classroom teacher for the Pine Glen Elementary School. And this year, the circuit breaker, which is reimbursement from the state for some of these tuition costs, is calculated at 65%.
Just a correction, it looks like the actual number there is at 50%, even though it says 65.
Correct.
What is-
I'll defer to Dr. Conti for that
Is the
answer.
50% the actual correct percentage, or is it 65 and the number should be different?
This is a circuit breaker reimbursement.
Yeah, I caught that too.
It's
Yeah, this is
the-
on page 2.
Well, not all of it, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong through the chair, but not all of it may be circuit breaker eligible,
Okay.
Right.
which usually is what happens. You have to have a certain amount to get to circuit breaker to then get it back. So I did that math to it. It's roughly 2,600,000 that may not be eligible for circuit breaker, but I was wondering if,
Are you referring to the line that's the offset for circuit breaker?
yeah.
Yes.
So that is the, currently how we work is 1 year in arrears. So we have 1 year, the money that we received this year for last year's expenditures, we use that full amount to offset for next year. So if there's like a percentage listed on the line, I'm actually just pulling the full amount that we're receiving in this year that will be used for next year.
Got it. Okay, thanks for that. Sorry to interrupt.
And it's not all.
The local education, we voted, the subcommittee voted 3-0 in favor to approve it.
Thank you. Would you like to add anything to that?
Again, the state sets out-of-district costs. They're increasing those costs by 14%. We petitioned the legislature, being my colleagues and I, we understand their costs may be going up. We asked them to spread it over 3 years, the state.
Yep.
So maybe do a 5, 5, and 5. They didn't listen to us, so they're doing the 14% for out-of-state tuitions. I think that's been the main driver. We also have created, we're seeing more children needing programming. I do want to thank the community for including our developmental skills classroom, which is our Pine Glen program. It allows us to keep our students in town, in our local schools. And as I can't stop time, these children are getting older, so they're becoming middle schoolers now. So that's why you're going to see the programs beginning to expand into the middle school. And again, in 3 or 4 years, which will pass very quickly, we'll see these students, this program at the high school as well. So we're going to, again, take these children through Burlington Public Schools. So, and as Mr. Moran said, we are obligated or mandated to provide services for these children. If not in Burlington, these children would be educated outside of Burlington at a much higher cost. So again, I think it's great that these kids are in our schools, love having them local, and they're just going to continue to age like all of our other students, and we're going to grow the program with the students.
Brad?
And perhaps for the sake of the folks at home, the Delta kids in the school system locally are, what, 14 or 15,000 per year versus out of district pushing 6 figures? Is that still the?
The in-district are much more expensive than 14, but probably much less than outside. I think, I haven't looked at the savings in a while, but it's usually almost twice as much to educate a child out of the district than it is in the district.
Okay.
Chris, am I overstating that?
At least, yeah.
And then, in addition, we have to provide transportation, so we're obligated to do that as well.
All right, thank you.
Chris?
So I'm a big proponent of adding this director of special ed programs for the investment of our special education programs. One of the hardest things that can be is consistency of programs from school to school to school, not just for teachers, but for students and for parents. We have a number of contractors that are used from Landmark to NEC within our special ed programs here at the school, in the school district, which are a huge resource for that. But there's not always the person that can look from school to school to school and making sure that students are feeling a very similar experience, but also then growing and attracting our programs to then potentially bring students back into the least restrictive environment, back into their community schools where they have more access to their neighborhoods, to their friends, to their peers and social groups. So I'm a huge proponent of this being added into our budget for that, but also potential for the investment that we could have by being able to bring some students back into the district by looking at those consistencies and the parents and the students feeling a very fluid special education program.
Is it in the budget now?
No,
It's not.
It's a new position.
I thought it was.
It's in the proposed budget.
Proposed,
Yeah,
the
that's
new
it.
position.
It's in the 4%.
It's in this budget.
Accommodated.
Not in the
This is-
4%.
It's in the accommodated.
The accommodated,
This is accommodated.
yeah.
I get it.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. It's in this bottom line.
Yeah, it's in bottom,
Yeah.
as proposed.
Megan?
Thank you. I want to echo Chris's comments. I think it's a important position. I know Christina Ciccolini works very hard on a lot of different things, and it is very difficult to, monitor that continuum and make sure that the programs are running efficiently. So I support the new position as well. Thank you.
More- Second.
Anything further? Okay. All right, so this is on the accommodated special education account, $14,202,037. Those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Abstain? Very good. All right, that's 11-0-0 in favor.
Point of information, Mr. Chairman, I didn't ask this, it's short. The 14% increase in the circuit breaker, which we'll see, whatever we get, if they give us 65%, that increase will be part of that reimbursement that we'll see next year, right?
The following year.
The following year, FY '25, right? All of that money, doesn't that money go back to the general fund?
No, that money is held in a separate fund, a circuit breaker fund, and can only be used to offset tuition costs.
In the district?
Correct.
I think
And,
that's.
and there's only a 1-year carryover limit, so, but 2 years. So the year you receive, you have the following
Thank you.
year
I was
to spend.
Clear on that. Thank you.
If I understand correctly, that, I'll call it a revolving account, I'm sure is a better word, got added a few years ago. It used to show up in free cash, but now it's put into this revolving account.
No, it's always been separate. I think the way that we, in years past, when I first came on, we had sort of been in the business of predicting how much we were going to receive the following year and how, at what level the state was going to fund it. So over the past several years, we've worked to build in so that we're not making those volatile predictions, and that we're working with the money that we received this year. We know what the state's funding it at, we know what we're going to receive, and that we know what our definite offset will be for the following year.
This is a much better predictable way of doing it.
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Okay, moving on to the education warrant articles, which we have a number of. 7-23, the Marshall Simons Middle School Security Cameras, Steve.
The school subcommittee voted 3-0 in favor. This capital warrant article is renovation of the Marshall Simons Middle School security cameras. It's $45,111. Essentially, there's 2 incompatible systems in some areas where the coverage is lacking, and so this is to address those concerns.
Would you like to add anything, Bob?
I would, please. Just to make it clear that it may not be in the backup, but we have 2 existing systems right now. Marshall Simons was an MSBA project, and we put a proprietary system in. Since then, we have integrated back to the system that we share with the police department as well. So part of this program would be to replace the existing cameras on the proprietary system, but then also add additional cameras to hit more spots for coverage. It does not include the labor for running any wires, where our in-house staff would do that.
Roger?
In reading the description of the equipment that was being ordered, I became a little concerned that student privacy was going to be an issue. Are the cameras placed everywhere? Is every place in the school on camera? I'm not familiar exactly where they are, but,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they're not in the bathrooms, but.
Correct. Correct. I'd prefer to not disclose locations publicly. We do have a map that we've worked with the police department and administration at the middle school, similar to other projects that we've done in Burlington, but they are not in the bathrooms, they're not in any locker rooms. We try to look for connecting hallways, we try to look for door exits, stairways, and so forth, but more of a wide angle. You'll see that some of the cameras are four-way cameras, so they have multiple lenses and multiple heads. So any adjoining hallways, we would use a four-head camera. Anytime we're at a two-way intersection, you'd see either a one or a two-way camera. So again, we'd look for wide angles. As far as student privacy goes, again, we already have cameras on the property as well, too. And again, we're really looking for any of the interference. We're not necessarily dialed into the detail of the student themselves.
Yeah, I think it's a delicate balance.
It is.
And it's hard to describe, find some middle ground. And if one gets a little hyper, one can be suspicious of misuse. But I know it's important to go back and revisit, to be able to go back if something bad happened, it would be very important to go back and understand how it worked. So.
And again, to Mr. Bond's point earlier, that's another environmental change that has been more recent than not. So if you ever told me I would be in the security business too, I would say I wouldn't have predicted that either. So that's another major change.
And if I could just add as well, I mean, we are being very selective and cautious where we do place these. It's a 145,000 square foot building, and the sheer number of cameras, if we were looking to adequately cover it, would have to triple, if not quadruple. So again, the increase may look like a large number of cameras, but given the size of the building, some of these cameras are interior, some are exterior. Again, it's just really for us to improve our visibility within the schools, not really to take on a full top-down view of everything that happens.
All right, thank you.
From a school administration point of view, it's very helpful with investigations, working with students, trying to get to the crux of certain situations of what happens when it's a he said, she said, sometimes situations, while they're not always dialed into the actual sound of what's going on, can be very helpful in those situations, any types of security situations, or just trying to locate people within the building. So balancing that can actually be helpful. Yeah, students do go missing sometimes, trying to figure out where and track them out through their steps can be very helpful using videos as well. So there's a counterbalance to that as well.
I noticed the rabbit hole got down, but I thought when the cameras were originally proposed, audio was not included.
I said, so you don't always hear the dialed into the audio, so you don't hear
I
that.
didn't think it was even supported.
No,
It was
usually
promised.
not. I don't know if these are, but usually they're not. It's just the actual, you can see the visual.
Obviously, you found a touchy point, so carry on. I'll support it.
How long are you retaining recordings?
Can I answer that off record? Okay.
Sure. Okay. There is a recording system, though, presumably.
There is. For the record, there are multiple recording systems at the middle school, at the high school, at the police department, and again, the police department do have access to these cameras. We have different monitoring capabilities amongst the schools. As far as large panel televisions, also in the police department, there's large panel televisions as well, too, in the dispatch area and other places. So there is monitoring capabilities at need and multiple sources to do that.
That's fine. Anything else?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, this for these are Simon security cameras in the amount of $45,111. Favor, raise your hands. Opposed? Abstain. All right, that's 1100. Next, we have 7-24, Pine Glen Instruction Space Transformation. Steve?
So the Pine Glen School is in need of additional instructional space. There are two spaces that have been identified to address, to transform into instructional space. The work is going to include drop ceilings, exterior doors, address safety issues. The work is going to cost $115,562. The subcommittee voted 3-0 in favor.
Great. Would you like to add anything to that?
I would, but I think it would turn into too long of a conversation. We do not have any immediate plans or long-term plans to no longer have a Pine Glen, and I know that's concerns of other people, so I do want to state that fact. Any square footage that we have right now in the building that could be converted is what we're looking to do. 5 years ago, there was a warrant article request for $25,000 to convert space. We wish that money would have gone further. That's why you're seeing this request right now, is really just to take, like I said, that valuable square footage and turn it into instructional spaces.
Questions?
Second.
Okay. All right, this is for the Pine Glen Instruction Space Transformation, $115,562. Those in favor, raise your hands. Opposed? Abstained?
So sorry, I'm in favor.
Gotta move fast, Frank. All right, that's,
Mr. Chairman,
excuse me?
point of information.
Yes.
Has capital budgets processed all these and did they approve them all?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Good question. All right, that's 11-0-0 in favor. 725, the high school light speed amplification systems. Steve?
Yeah, so the schools have been adding amplification systems to provide equity amongst all students to ensure that wherever they're sitting in classes, they can hear what the instructor is stating. This warrant article is to supplement spaces inside the high school that are currently lacking amplification or need replacement. The model that they're currently looking to outfit about 100 spots. The cost of it is $154,980, and the subcommittee voted 3-0 in favor.
You like to add something?
Yeah, just briefly. So this amplification system started off in our elementary schools and into our middle schools as the students aged up. What we've been looking to do is move multiple units into the high school. So over the past few years, we've done that, somewhere in the tune of maybe 10 to 15 at a time. But what's happened is we've had to either increase those numbers, but also move those units amongst the classrooms as the students change grades and so forth. What this is really looking to do is to offset those numbers of the classrooms and spaces that we haven't put them in yet and haven't been able to put them in, and really just bring that up to a level. So not only does this help and accommodate the students that need the hearing requirements, but it also is a benefit to the teachers as well too, because it provides them to talk at a lower level while amplifying their sound and voice throughout the whole entire room. And it does assist as well too with any presentations and or multimedias that we use as well in the spaces.
What percentage coverage does this bring you up to in terms of, instructional spaces that have a system now?
I don't want to say 100%, but this is going to be more focused on classroom-based, so the larger areas usually have portable systems or more podium-type systems. So this is really looking for typical classroom places. And then again, the high school, as you all know, has many, many places that we can't get to every nook and cranny. So it's really to focus on the classroom spaces.
Brad?
So this isn't replacing any of what we've already put in place at the high school, and those systems are still, the original installation is still good for another 10, 15 years? Is that, this equipment's good for, 20 years?
Yeah, so.
No.
I'm not going to say 20 years. I would say 10 is a typical life expectancy for most technology equipment. What does happen is that there are batteries for the 2 microphones per unit that do wear out over time. So we have that built into our operating budget to cover the replacement of batteries and any microphones that get broken or lost. The systems themselves are mounted, so they're not typically damaged unless they wear out or malfunction, but the microphones, because they're movable, again, some have gone missing, some fall to the ground and break, but the batteries do fail.
Brad's Windows 3 system is working fine still.
Second cell phone,
Additional questions?
Motion to approve?
Thank you. All right, this is Article 725, VHS Lightspeed Amplification Systems for $154,980. Those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Abstain? All right, that's 11-0-0. Next is Article 726, the BECC student bathroom renovations. Steve?
So the BECC is the Burlington Early Education Center, and so the bathrooms that they have are in need of repair. The current fixtures, flooring, and partitions are worn from many years of use. And as you can imagine, that age group needs height-appropriate fixtures for their use, and currently they're not set that way, and so they're not ADA compliant. So this work is to renovate them to be age-appropriate and ADA compliant. The subcommittee voted 3-0 in favor to support this.
Yeah, I just want to add, it's Burlington Early Childhood Center and not Education Center, so it's BECC. And second is that really stress the fact that we're looking to make these age-appropriate and size-appropriate. It was a high school space before until BECC now graciously is in that spot. And we have put it through their rigor. It's definitely time-tested, and it is time to replace them. But we're really looking to make sure that they fit the needs of the population that's in there now.
Questions?
Wait, sorry.
Chris?
Sorry, I'm looking at the capital request forms, and I noticed that some have underneath estimated 10% contingency, some have a 5% contingency, this has a 10% contingency. Just curious, is there a reason why some have a 10% contingency and why some have a 5?
It depends on the volatility of the market,
Okay.
right? So in some of our trade labor fields, our estimates and quotes have been very erratic.
Yep.
So if we're not working off any of the, like the bid marketplaces or so forth, it just gives us a little bit more volatility in the market.
Yeah, that's fine. I just didn't know if there's a difference of like, certain projects are 5, certain projects are 10. Yeah, okay. Sorry.
Looking for a second for Sonia?
Second.
Thank you. All right. This is Article 726, BECC bathroom renovations for $82,770. Raise your hand in favor. Opposed? Abstained? Okay, that's 11-0-0. Next is Article 727, Francis Wyman stairwell resurfacing. Steve?
So there are 4 stairways in Francis Wyman that have not been fixed or have not been addressed since 1996. In the surface tread of the stairs and the middle landings are worn from the wear and tear of the 500 students that go up and access the second floor. The surface area is not safe. It tends to be slippery and can be a source of accidents for students that use those stairs. The subcommittee voted 3-0 in favor to support.
Anything additional, Bob? Okay.
Pretty straightforward, this one, yeah.
Questions?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay. This is Article 727, Francis Wyman stairwell resurfacing for $42,049. Raise your hand if in favor. Opposed? Abstained? 11-0-0. Article 728, the Pine Glen siding and soffits. Steve?
So there's various places along the outside of Pine Glen, which have soffits that are deteriorating and cracking. And this provides an opportunity for pests such as bees to get in. And so the soffits need to be repaired. The subcommittee voted 3-0 in favor to support this.
Anything additional?
Yes, just briefly, please. So for those of you who don't know what a soffit is, it's the area that connects the roof to the building. That could be in the form of an overhang or the form of a flat surface. While the roof was replaced with a 30-year rubber roof about 7.5 years ago, the soffit connection was not. Since then, we have seen animals enter the building, and also there's a condition, it does not do well for the heating and air conditioning of that space. So twofold, the reason to replace it is that the damaged areas allow animals in, and also for the conditioned space in the attic crawl space.
Questions? Roger?
More of a comment. In my experience, soffit materials do not last 50 years.
How many years?
50, that's what's on the form. Useful life is not 50 years for that.
These are really good soffits.
The one we're replacing is 62. So, I mean,
There you go. You're sandbagging.
they don't make them as good as they used to, so.
And we can't get 3 more years out of that?
Okay, anything additional? All right, have a motion. All right, this is Article 728, Pine Glen Siding and Soffits for $150,403. Those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Abstain. It's 11-0-0. Next is Article 729, Francis Wyman Cafeteria Grease Trap. Steve?
Yeah, so the current grease trap that's in the Francis Wyman cafeteria is currently undersized and needs to be replaced because of code requirements. If the grease trap is not replaced, then we will not pass a future Board of Health inspection, which could cause problems serving lunch to students. The cost of it, which is $39,393, also includes while it includes the replacement of the grease trap, it will also require the addition of a new triple sink for the 4-inch copper piping and jackhammering the concrete floor to access the piping underneath and to repair the floor. The subcommittee recognized the importance of feeding students at lunch during their school day, and we voted 3-0 in favor to support it.
I'm the grease trap expert. Actually, I didn't even know Francis Wyman had a grease trap, so.
Is there a regular schedule to clean out these?
Yeah.
areas?
There is, and it has to be inspected as well yearly. I do want to stress that we're not replacing it because of code, we're replacing it because it's end of life, and it's undersized. So the reason we're replacing it is to get it to the proper size, which will now be up to code. So we've used it for as much of its life as possible, just to try to save that, but we're at that point where we can't save it anymore. So
Anything further from our grease trap expert? Or?
he did review it, and he agrees that we should replace it, so.
Very good. Questions?
Second.
Very good. All right, this,
Dirty Jobs TV show any week.
yes, Article 729, Francis Wyman Grease Traps, $39,393. Raise your hand if in favor. Opposed? Abstained? It's 11-0-0. All right, next is Article 730, Memorial Fire System Upgrades. Steve?
So there's a bidirectional amplification unit in Marshall Simon, or in the Memorial Elementary School, which is no longer supported and needs to be replaced to pass certification. This system is used specifically for ensuring that emergency calls are getting through during emergency situations. The system is for critical responder radio signals and communications. The cost is $41,190, and the subcommittee voted 3-0 in favor to support it.
I just wanted to comment to Brad, this is a particular case where the vendor no longer supports the technology here. So this is the reason why this would be, while the system is functional, some of the connections to it and the support and software support is no longer available for that. So the end of life is actually from the manufacturer itself. So we were notified that this system will no longer work once we get to September of 2023, so.
Is this a radio repeater or is?
Correct, yep. Yeah, and it's on the emergency services frequencies, and it was installed when, obviously, Memorial was built. So at that point, while it was newer technology, it had been in the market for a few years. So again, we're actually seeing only 12 years of use for us, but it had been in the market for close to 15 to 18 years availability. So the new one changes a lot from frequencies, changes a lot from, the way that they service the actual equipment. We do need a licensed person to come in and install this. It's not something that we can just do in-house. And because it works on the emergency services, we have to coordinate this with the fire department as well.
Do we have any other schools that are also going to age out?
We don't have the system in the other schools.
Oh.
So we would like to have these systems in the other schools, but we don't.
Gotcha. Thanks. Move to approve?
Second.
I've got to ask since you brought it up. Why do we need it in this school and not other ones?
because this was an MSBA project and it's a new building. So when it was rebuilt, it was installed then as part of the system. So it's a benefit and a safety to the emergency services, but it wasn't required when the other schools were built, nor was it a code requirement for us to install it in the old buildings.
This is the newest building, right?
Yeah, so,
Kind of grandfathered in.
yeah, so what we're looking to do right now is just replace the head unit that goes into our server switch room. There's multiple wires, speakers, and connection points throughout the building. So installing it in other buildings would be more intensive than just replacing the head unit.
And Francis, we did a refurb of Marshall Simons, that I assume that was not a requirement to install a system at that time.
No, and we also did a new fire alarm in Francis Wyman. So it has some of the capabilities, but it doesn't have the full capabilities that this does.
All right, thank you.
Is there a grease trap?
There's a grease trap in all of our buildings.
Okay, do we get a motion on this?
Motion to approve.
Very good, thank you.
Saving the best for last.
Article 730, Memorial Fire System Upgrades for $41,190. Raise your hand if in favor. Opposed? Abstain. That's 11-0-0. Next is Article 731, Francis Wyman Brass Field. Steve?
So the Francis Wyman, that's the baseball field, correct? Yeah. So the baseball field at Francis Wyman is in serious need of repair. In fact, there's been a parents group which submitted a separate warrant article to that same effect. The school, in coordination with the, one second.
This is this was in a separate email that I forwarded from Steve. You should have several documents. One shows a diagram of the field. Another one gives a cost breakdown. And here's three. And the third one has, it is in the, is it just a single-page capital request form that gives the,
It's on the website.
the
It's
700,000?
on the website,
Is it
yeah.
on, is it on the website at this
Yeah.
point? Okay.
Yeah,
But you should be able to find three documents.
apologies for the late delivery, but we didn't receive this information until last night. So the genesis of this was that parents created a warrant article to repair the field. So Bob Kuna, Sean Hart, Brendan Egan from Rec met with the parents and developed a larger project to improve the fields. And they received some funding outside the warrant article for the dugouts, I believe. And in some of the work that they need to do in repairing of the field will shift the alignment of the baseball field, so it's not necessarily abutting the property line. And the school is providing the funding source of it as which is in alignment with the fields assessment that it also completed. The subcommittee voted 3-0 in favor to support it.
Okay, and just to be clear, Article 31, we think is going to be covered by this, although it hasn't been officially
So
withdrawn.
Article 31 is the parents' equivalent warrant article that was submitted independently. The proponents of that warrant article were made aware that the school subcommittee, or the school committee warrant article had been adopted by the school committee and was approved at that school committee meeting last night. So they're going to take a look at the school committee discussion and look at the materials that were distributed to the Ways and Means Committee to ensure that it will cover the intent of their warrant article, and if so, we'll remove it or withdraw it, and if not, we will get, then if not, the school subcommittee on Ways and Means will then meet with the proponents and review it, and we'll bring it at a future meeting if the proponents choose to go forward with it.
So just to be clear, we're talking about Article 7-31, but Article 31 is the one that
potential.
will be covered later. We're not going to cover that tonight,
Correct.
depending on how it turns out.
Correct, and the numbering of the warrant articles is causing a vast amount of confusion as to which one refers to which.
Yes, an unfortunate coincidence. Would you like to add something to this?
I would, because the last part of our capital conversations are connected in sort of the same, I think just require some context. So Bob can answer any very specific questions about the project. So just as we get a guideline at the start of our operating budget conversation, the town also gives us a guideline for capital projects. So the school committee has a 10-year plan, and the town allots us money for capital warrants. Again, every year, the allotment this year to schools was $2.5 million. So a very typical conversation for us would be to go through all the warrant articles that you heard that we need continually. We have 1 million square feet. There's lots of things to repair, so we would do those repairs, and the town is very generous about giving us the warrant article money. So what you've heard sort of up until the baseball field is coming out of that $2.5 million. You all supported last year a comprehensive field study that the school committee petitioned to have all of our athletic facilities looked at, because we were having lots of demands and lots of complaints. And what we didn't want to do is favor one complaint over another. Believe me, it's not the first time we've heard that the baseball field needs to be upgraded, but the harder conversation was to say, do we do the baseball field first, or do we need something else first? Like, what's the priority? We were hoping that field study was going to be done sooner than it was. That's why we initially put a placeholder on the warrant without a whole lot of detail. The field study, again, was just completed. There's a group in town that didn't want to wait for the field study, so they put together a warrant for a baseball field themselves. And as Mr. Moran commented, once we got our master plan in, and it did prioritize the Francis Wyman baseball field as a project that needed to get done. And they also put an estimated cost of upgrading that field as a part of their planning. So sort of our process was moving forward. Bob did meet with the proponents of the sort of article that was coming outside of the school district and Park and Rec. My understanding is the article is for about 60% of the cost that we've gotten. So we feel our project will incorporate all of their requirements and actually more, and it's provided by the person who did the athletic field study, so I think has some expertise. And so, again, my hope is that they'll see that we were moving forward. And I think the theme with what we're going to be talking about is sometimes you need to go slow to go fast, is we wanted to make sure that we were addressing all of our fields in a comprehensive way. So Bob shared with you sort of the executive summary, which you have. I think the full report is over 500 pages.
596.
And so all I can tell you is that we're trying to work within the free cash allotment that the schools have. And that obviously with the needs that we have across all of our fields, we'll be putting together a community committee, and then obviously coming back to this board in future years for funding for other projects in order to have our field use sort of upgraded over the next 5 to 10 years. So I think that was the point of your supporting the field use analysis that we currently are working from. And the baseball field is, again, the first project that we feel like we can do completely with the money that we had available with our $2.5 million project. So that's sort of the context of this, and why we didn't give it to the school committee initially and only had a placeholder because we hadn't received the final report yet. We got the report. Again, it identified the baseball field as a priority and gave us a price for the estimated project. And again, the school committee last night then voted to support this particular project moving forward as our, again, priority for this year. Is that correct? And I'm sure you want to know what's included in the $700,000. And with that, I'm quickly out of my area of
Well, again, I'm going to thank Dr. Conti for that intro. It was a lot of detail, all factual. We also met with Parks and Rec as well, too, as part of that meeting group. So Brendan Egan joined us as well with not only Sean Hart, the athletic director, but also those two residents that were supporting the other article. Do I believe that they will remove that article? Yes, but I also believe that this project in front of you not only covers their article, but really addresses the needs for the field. So not only from parent request, player request, coach request, we really have not put a lot of effort into the baseball field. For years, we've heard the need to do this. So this doesn't just look at throwing some seed on it. On the right field line, it moves the whole entire field, changes the angle, and moves it over about 12 feet. Why would we do that? Because there's elevation on the right side. There's also some trees that are growing over into it, and we have a shorter right field. By moving it over, we gain access to all of that. We also provide some clearance for the dugouts, and we provide some clearance for the safety entranceways from the parking lot. Additionally, there's some batting cages that are not part of this plan that were donated by a local parents group and coordinated with the rec department. Those will stay. There'll be some bullpens, there'll be covered dugouts. We'll be replacing the fences and putting the safety, the fencing area on top of it. We'll be replacing the backstop. We'll be adding screenage to it. We'll be addressing any of the depressions that are in the outfield, and we'll be repairing the irrigation systems. Again, really a long time coming and something we probably should have been doing more diligent work on, but we really think this hits all the home runs that we should be targeting at this field.
What a
Waited to
metaphor.
say that, yeah.
No pun intended.
Okay, questions? Right?
Just one, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really in favor of this. I want to verify, this is going to be an all-natural turf field, is that correct?
It's going to be an all-grass
Grass.
field with dirt and a clay pitcher's mound.
Okay, so, and that's great. I do notice in this study that was done, they were all over how to address overusage and that sort of thing, and we're pushing synthetic materials. And I don't think that's what we want to do, but that seems to be what they were recommending.
I think, through the chair, so I think they gave us some high, medium, and low options for the field, maybe in their opinion. I think there's some opinions in Burlington that turf is a valuable resource as well, too. But again, we're the ones that are putting forward the project, so we're not pursuing turf for this.
You're not tied to necessarily their recommendations?
Nope.
All right, that's great. And that's all I wanted to know, thank you.
Roger, you had something, I think?
Yeah, so it looks like a really good project. I guess I have kind of a pointed question, which is, did the school committee's recreation subcommittee meet with the recreation commissioners or the recreation commission to concur that this is the right project and this is the right timing?
I'm not sure. I think the school committee representative to Park and Rec had talked about the condition of fields. I think they supported the master plan document. I'm not sure they discussed this particular project. Again, Brendan was part of the conversation about the baseball field and moving forward.
Don't hold back, Roger.
I'm not sure I have a good follow-up, but okay, so I guess one of my first observations was $700,000 is a lot of money. And admittedly, you're spending it on 3 fields, and they're gonna turn into Class A fields, which is good. I think I worry a little bit about all of the other playing surfaces in towns and the requirements, the broader requirements of the rest of the citizens of Burlington, not just the school students. And so it's a fair distribution. I can't argue that this project isn't great. Clearly, it's going to have a really good outcome. I guess I'm a little concerned that the Recreation Department and the commissioners were not more involved in the setup of it, because they do end up doing all the maintenance on it. And it is going to be a significant resource that they can use as well as the schools. But it's hard to argue against a project other than it's a lot of money.
Okay. Follow-up question to that, thank you. Is this the project that corresponds to the Francis Wyman Fields recommendation?
What are you pointing at?
Francis Wyman in the report.
Pointing out the master plan.
That's, again, the executive summary on the
Yeah.
full-size document, more pages, the support, yeah.
Right. What I would just mention is 700,000 seems like a lot of money on a field, but that they specify a minimum level of upgrade to cost 660. So I think perhaps by these recommendations, we're doing the minimum. Is that accurate?
It's accurate if we believe that the engineers that, completed the report
If we
are
believe the
good at their
recommendations.
job. So I don't have a accurate cost analysis on that, not my area of expertise. I know that when we bid the football field, again, given the market, that the numbers came in higher than we were anticipated. So again, there's some contingency built into this as, presented in front of you. But we do think the numbers are accurate.
Okay. So, I mean, the conclusion I would draw is fields are very expensive. And we're doing the minimum here.
Sonia?
So my question, I have twofold question. The first is, I actually don't think that the 700 sounds reasonable based on like numbers we've heard from other things that have been renovated. So it's not the number per se that I wanted to ask. I think the reason why Roger was asking the first part of the question was we sat to do our warrants for the rec department, and they are coming forward with a master plan for field assessments. And so Roger and I specifically asked the question of the overlap, because we know that the school department, just did one. And I just wanted to make sure that we're not overlapping efforts. So I'm asking you the same, I'm asking the two of you the same question that we asked the rec department. Is there an overlap of efforts from a master plan that's happening at the recreation, which they're coming before us for, and this? Rec felt that these projects were very specifically school field, maintained by recreation. I want to watch my words, but obviously school fields that the students are using. Is that an accurate statement?
I think what would be an accurate statement is my understanding is that the REC's master plan is looking more at all fields. This is an athletic field assessment. So this is specifically looking at just the athletic fields.
Okay.
So any other grassy area, wooded area, and so forth would not be in our master plan.
Yes.
So again, it is going to look at the participation and the use from an athletic standpoint, not from a recreational or activity standpoint.
Okay, you know what I'm saying, right, Bob? I mean, I'm just trying to make sure that we're not duplicating an effort of something going here. What I'm understanding is the master plan coming from the rec department before this committee and then ultimately to town meeting will not duplicate these fields and vice versa. I mean, that they can kind of marry together. I think if I understood them correctly, I'm understanding that this will kind of incorporate in, and I think the message I'd love to say is it would be great if then conclusively there'd be some sort of a plan going forward on how, I completely get that there are needs that the school department needs from fields and then needs from recreation, but if we can meld them together once the two plans are complete, it looks like this one is, and then once the master plan is complete for rec, that way, if there's a capital expenditure that's happening in the same area, maybe it could be collective, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. I do want to state that there are multiple needs. So the rec department does have needs, the school department does have needs. The conversations that we've had with the rec department is that this study is independent right? So this study is going to look at the athletic fields and give us recommendations and give us a timeline. When I say us, the us is the athletic department, the school department, and the recreation department, right? And then collectively, whether we include parent groups, committees, and so forth, present which project we think is the next target. Also, we have to look for funding, so we will plan to work together. So that collaboration really starts now that we have this plan. And again, like I said, my understanding is that the REC's master plan has a larger scale view.
Definitely has a larger scale, I think that's what we heard, but they specifically talked about that the fields that are covered in this plan are not necessarily covered in that, but that they will marry together. Am I wording that right, Roger? So I feel like that's the part that I would love to know, that, you know, this project has merit as it stands, but once the other plan, if the will of town meeting is to pass it, and I hope they do, then the two can marry together, because then you guys would be at the same speed, because if one master plan happens and then X happens later, it'd be nice to kind of marry them together, because then maybe there'd be collective effort to look at some of the fields. And then my second part of the question is, was it the dugout that the parents group is still looking to do? Is there a dugout that's coming onto this? Now, I'm back to this now on the
Batting
warrant.
cages.
Oh, sorry, batting cages.
Batting cages are what the
batting
parent
cages,
group.
They're already there.
Yeah, and they coordinated again with the rec department and athletics to have those already installed, that they're now.
Okay, so their hope, or our hope, is that before you get to town meeting, that would get pulled, is that correct?
That's correct, yes. Because otherwise, we'll have two articles going for the same thing.
Right, and one will ultimately fail over the other.
Unless town meeting decides to combine it and go for the upgraded project that was in here, and, but I think they would withdraw.
I just want to make sure. Thank you.
So just state the obvious, REC has a copy of the full report that you've received, I assume?
Yes.
500 or whatever.
The
pages.
summary and the full report. Yeah.
All right, and
Thank you,
they've reviewed this warrant article to make sure that there's something else they would want on this field, or?
I think so. That wasn't our impression.
Yeah.
So can I move that we table this until when we review the master plan, the REC's master plan, I think is on May 3rd's agenda, so we can see both of the plans in scope. I don't think that's, so.
Will Rec be here for that?
We'll be here, but I think that's a master plan, though.
Yeah.
That
Right,
won't
but, so, okay, so let me see if I can lay this out a little different. The school's athletic field master plan is nearly complete. It's not final, but it's obviously complete. It would be interesting to see that the scope of that plan, as it is nearly complete, and the proposed rec master plan, that they fit together. And then it would be and it would also give time, if we delayed voting on this tonight, for the citizens' plan to work through a little bit more process. But I think we can wait to vote on this particular plan till these two things settle down.
Is that a motion to postpone?
Yes, I would move to postpone.
For me, the biggest question would be, I mean, obviously, REC isn't gonna have their master plan in place. They're just starting that, presumably. So the real question is if they've looked at this plan and they think this is the right way to do this one field at least, so that we aren't reworking it when REC says we'd like to have something over here or something. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I would like to see a positive statement from the director of rec and or the rec commission endorsing this plan.
Right.
Can I follow up on that, though?
Yes.
I understand what you're saying, Roger. Here's my only thing. I don't think it's about, I think the athletic field for the baseball is coming out of what the athletic department need is for that particular field. I think my bigger concern, and maybe I misunderstood it, I just want to make sure that we're melding two plans together so that we're moving forward on that. I think REC is maintaining, am I understanding this correctly? REC maintains.
Yeah,
No? Yes.
you are.
Oh.
When you're,
So I don't know if you wanna, if you want to propose to table it so that we can understand that, A, the parent group or the group that is doing it is absolutely withdrawing, that this is the plan that's moving to town meeting, and that's the discussion. I want to make sure that I word this right. The master plan, this is funding that's coming before us for a master plan, which means they're at least a
Okay.
year.
I guess I would, okay, I'm trying to tie together too many things.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, yes,
I
and
would like to
I
delay
appreciate what you're saying.
until 31 versus 7-31 is resolved.
The delay, though, may complicate that, because if they know that we support this, then they'll likely pull theirs. But
But, it's not our problem, right?
They can always bring it back.
they can bring it back, they can, yeah,
I mean,
either way, it's, we
I
can,
want a second, if you want to postpone till May, whatever,
the last,
Third.
May 3rd.
Well,
I
I'll
want
go,
a second for that.
I'll go out on a limb that presumably if we support this, we wouldn't support 31 since it appears to be a subset, right?
Right, but in terms of the content, the plan that's put in place that would be proposed by 31 and this one proposed by 7-31, I assume that the parties that are interested in those plans should actually come together based on the plan and their own decisions, and that we should not actually influence that decision. They should come together and decide that one of these plans is suitable over the other.
And either we can sort that out on May 3rd or whatever day it is,
But
So, Mike,
I'm not sure.
And again, Mr. Riggs, we did come together, we did meet, and Brendan has been involved in the athletic facilities master plan as the plan has been developed. So again, he may agree or disagree, but this is what we're saying, the first sort of priority of the athletic field study that needs to get done. Clearly, we have a group of parents who believe it's a problem because they put their own warrant article first. And so we're sort of fitting this into the free cash allotment that we have as a priority for us following the master plan that we're trying to, I guess, implement over time. So, again, I think everyone's trying to do the right thing here, and we would support, we've supported many joint projects with Park and Rec where the funding for those projects came from the free cash allotment for schools because they happen to be on school property or benefiting schools. I think the Marshall Simons Field Lights, if I remember, my brain remembers correctly, was a Park and Rec request that we supported and provided. I know it's not our money, you know what I'm saying, it was part of our, whatever, it's not an allotment until it's voted. I'm not counting
We know what you're
chickens.
saying.
I'm not
The
counting
proposed
chickens, all I'm
amount.
saying is we work together all the time. We appreciate that they maintain our fields, this is our next priority. If you're saying Park and Rec may identify a different non-athletic field instead of this, then again, I guess they could do that, but this is what our first priority is with that. And I do believe there have been lots of conversations at the Rec Commission about the condition of our fields and the need to upgrade our fields. There were conversations about organic versus inorganic. I mean, there have been lots of conversations, and we're trying to take action to upgrade, again, our first athletic field as a result of our athletic fields assessment. What I would say is there are many more projects forthcoming as identified in our master plan. Ms. Rollins, I agree, we should work collaboratively with Park and Rec, and I don't want to compete with them, but we are trying to provide, I guess, better fields as a result of the study that we've undertaken.
I appreciate that, Dr. Conti. All I was trying to ask really is, from what I understood from our recreation meeting, they were bringing forward a master plan. My question to them, which I was just re-asking the same question to you, is, are we duplicating an effort at all in what you've done versus what they're looking to do? His answer was no, that it's not a duplication of effort, that the two would meld together. So I was just really stating a case of, it'd be great to then collaborate that. Not that there's not a need for a baseball field, but just a collaboration of two master plans, really. You know what I mean? I don't think we can link one master plan to another because one is still being done, but I do think it's important for us to see that the two should meld in together, because there are some fields that are utilized more by the high school or by Burlington Public Schools than others. Did I word that right? I think that's really what I'm trying to say, is the two hopefully can meld together in some way to see an inclusive of all the fields. That's it, you know?
Steve, you had something?
I was just going to say that because this is coming out of the school funding, I think we should honor this request and support this one over the Article 31. I think if the schools have this athletic need and identified it and it's in alignment with their master plan, we should support it. I do know that they work tirelessly to collaborate with the rec department, but I think because it's school funds and it's coming from their allotment and they've identified it as a priority, we should support it. So I would not support the postponement.
Chris?
So, I'm for this warrant article. I think there's 2 points that I just wanted to quickly make. Is one of the, along the lines of what Tanya was saying, is, if the schools are going off of a certain allotment of money from free cash, recreation's going off a certain allotment of money, again, making sure we're not duplicating, or if recreation's gonna, in the future, do a warrant article the schools don't have to do, that could help them in their planning and vice versa. So I do agree with this, and it has been difficult. One of the other things that, and this was totally quick math, but like through this report, it looks like there's 11.8 million in immediate needs, 22.3 million in mid-level, and if we did this whole report, it's 45.8 million. That's a lot in what we're looking at for just fields. And we won't, but, and to Roger's point is, we want to make sure that we're looking at all of our students, not just our athletes. And then I would argue that when we're also looking at these projects and the importance, we're looking at gender equality in them as well. And so we're not just, picking the sports that are going to favor certain students or a certain population, that we're looking across the board for gender equality as well when we're coming to these decisions that are being made. But in regards to this, I definitely would be in favor of this.
So, Roger, you had a motion.
Yeah, I hesitate to speak for Brendan, and I'm not certain that I want other people to speak for him either, for the Recreation Commission.
Well, procedurally, you can always get new information and revisit an article before town meeting, if that came to pass. We're gonna meet with rec anyway,
Yeah, I'll be here in a few weeks.
so I think nothing bad's gonna happen.
Well, I'm not sure that the athletic, I think it was more, my question was really more on the master plan.
Yep.
I don't
Okay.
think the discussion was on the athletic field. I think it was just about melding.
Yep.
All right, I'll withdraw my motion,
Motion to approve?
And just,
but I won't second it.
Second.
I'll second that one.
very good.
I didn't withdraw your other
Christine
second.
wanted to make a comment. I don't know if she still does. Christine wanted to
Oh, I'm
have her
sorry.
hand up.
Hey, Chris, did you want to say something?
Not any longer.
Okay.
Wow, I never thought we'd be able to shut Christina. All right, I love you. So, just to be clear, if we do pass this, I believe we could, if we receive new information from rec, we could reconsider, right? So,
Correct.
In addition, we still risk the original proponents of 31 coming and saying they still want to support theirs, and so we would need to schedule a subcommittee meeting to meet with them.
yeah,
to
I don't
go-
want to jump to conclusions, but.
Yeah, I'm hoping,
Conclusions.
that won't happen. I'm pretty sure it won't.
So we,
So would it, just to make sure we have a resolution of that, are you working with them to understand if
Yeah,
they plan to withdraw, and presumably you're going to encourage them to speak
so the
with
proponent said he's traveling for work. He needs 48 hours to look through and and look through what the school department is doing, and then he'll get back to me, in which case we'll schedule a subcommittee meeting and go forward.
We'll start the two-day chess clock.
Okay, can I just,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? I'm confused about the next warrant. So are they propose, I mean, even if it passes, the school department is the one who would oversee the construction?
We have zero backup on that article, so we don't know what it costs or what the plan is. So, other than that, we're all set.
I just hope, just as a point of information.
Right, of
the
course.
Subcommittee, right?
Right.
I mean, they have to understand it all, and I love a group that wants to do it themselves, I think.
It
that's-
is a school field, so they would have to.
No, I just want them to understand it would still be going through the school department.
Right.
So it's really just, it's a funding mechanism so that the school department could take care of a field. So if, I would encourage them to think about the fact that if the funding mechanism, all they're doing is moving a funding mechanism at that point, right?
Right.
It's absolutely a school field though, so obviously it would be overseen by the schools, any work that was done. Okay, I think we're ready to vote. So this is on Article 731. That's the right one. Francis Wyman. Boy, I really
Don't
picked
mess
the
that
wrong
up.
one.
Don't
want to
mess-
screw this up. Article 731, Francis Wyman Grassfield for $700,000. Raise your hand if in favor. Okay, opposed? All right,
I'll go on record.
and
I'll
that's
stick to my
fine.
guns here.
And abstain? Oh, I'm sorry.
Not abstaining, but I have a question on this before we move on.
Did you want to delay the vote, or are you?
I'm voting yes, but then I have a question after the vote.
Hold
yes.
1 second, please. I don't want to screw this up. All right, so that is 10-1-0. All right, Brad.
Bob, on the athletic facilities assessment, I see that tennis courts are included, but not basketball courts, or basketball courts being lumped in with playground equipment, or?
There's a two-part answer to this question. Sorry. So originally, when we presented this to not only the school committee, but then the town meeting, there was a list of fields. Then there was some contingency money to then add additional fields. So we did meet with the rec department, Brendan Egan in particular. He provided us with a list of fields. We gave that to the engineering company. They're going to work on those fields. So what you're seeing right now, there's a note, I think, on the third page that says there are some additional fields that will come on board. So they will be assessed. One will be Simons Park. Again, like we said, there's a focus on athletics for these fields. So there may be some parks that do have a basketball net at them that aren't really considered athletic fields. I can say one in particular in my neighborhood, like the Tot Lot Park, behind the bowling alley. That has a small, maybe 10 by 10 court, one basketball net, and then a small playground structure. That's not being assessed in the athletic field assessment.
Okay. And at Francis Wyman, basketball courts are still over by the cafeteria, is that storage? Right.
Yeah.
Right, so again, not a basketball court per se. We have portable backboards that we use for recess. We have a basketball facility in the gym. We don't have exterior basketball courts at Francis Wyman.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I did forget to ask one nitty-gritty question. I didn't see anything in there about relining for the soccer fields and so on. Is that included in this plan, I assume?
Our athletic department and rec department have that in their operating budget. So that's something that happens after particular seasons. So it's not included in this.
Not necessary for this one, good. Okay. Fortuitously, Articles 732 and 733 are withdrawn. Is that still true?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so moving on to Article 29, the Burlington High School feasibility study, and we'll talk about this in conjunction with Article 30, which is repurposing the May 22 town meeting Article 718, which was to be the music floor reconstruction, and the intent or desire is to repurpose that and add it to Article 29 for a total of $1.5 million.
Correct.
Again,
So-
that's correct. Go, Mr. Moran.
Yeah, so to put this in context, as Dr. Conti indicated earlier, the school had an allotment of 2.5 million, of which we've already spent more. We haven't spent the 2.5 million, but if you were add to the top of the current amount that we spent, adding 1.5 million for the feasibility study would certainly exhaust that. And so what the school would like to do is take the warrant article that we passed in the May town meeting from last year to make the music room accessible, which was the money allotted at that time was 450,000. They would like to repurpose that towards the feasibility study and then use the remaining amount of their warrant article allotment to fund the remainder of that at 1.05 million. So the combination of 450,000 and the 1.05 million will go for the feasibility study at 1.5 million. So now I'll talk a little bit about the feasibility study, or do we want to just stay on the repurpose?
No, keep.
Okay, all right, so the repurposing of the article also aligns with the BHS feasibility study in the fact that at last year's town meeting, there was some concerns that it wasn't clear why we were prioritizing this particular request over the many different options that we could prioritize at the high school. And so they took that feedback to heart, and what they would like to do is do a complete feasibility study like we would do with the program for new schools, but instead fund it ourselves. So they would follow the letter of the law that they would be following through the Fox Hill MSCPA process, and build a feasibility study that would give them the ideas and the prioritization to help them assess which future projects to fund at the high school, given the fact that we've gone out 12 times so far and not gotten acceptance into the new school building program, and that we may have to do some of these repairs ourselves. So now, the subcommittee voted 3-0 in favor to support that.
Okay, so several contextual points here. So obviously, I participated at town meeting last year discussing the floor, and while accessibility issues are very serious, there are many parts of the high school that aren't up to building codes currently. And I think general feeling from town meeting, as someone who was standing in front of them, was why this project, why not something else, and are we going to keep seeing sort of $500,000 upgrades to the high school continuously over time? And no one said that specifically. I'm just telling you sort of the feeling that I got. One of the reasons for doing master planning, from my perspective, is honestly so that you can say no to people, because there are parents who want a baseball field, there are others who want a lacrosse field, and there are others who want a swimming pool, and it makes sense to look sort of holistically, and someone to actually say, here's your first priority, here's your second, and if you say no to someone, you can say, great, the lacrosse field is number 3 in our priority list, and at least they have an answer and we can move forward. So my concern is there are many people at the high school using a facility that is older. There are many demands on that building and many requests for repairs, never mind the HVAC system, never mind everything else. So when we got into the MSBA pipeline for Fox Hill and we hired a project manager as part of that required process, we approached that project manager, Doran Whittier, and said, could we supplement your work at Fox Hill to have you give us some advice on the high school? And Nicole had that conversation with them, and they came back and basically said, because of the size of the high school, because of the age, our recommendation is that you really undergo a full feasibility study for this building. If you really want a sort of a 10-year plan that makes sense, you should really undergo a full feasibility study. If we were to have the high school accepted into the MSBA pipeline or process, the first step is actually a full feasibility study anyway. So the school committee wanted to move forward with a full feasibility study for Burlington High School over and above the $2.5 million allotment for free cash warrant articles. So please understand our initial proposal was to provide $2.5 million worth of one-time costs, repairs, everything else, and article number 30, a $1.5 million feasibility study for the high school that we think is needed. What you're seeing now in front of you is sort of our way, Ms. Rollins, of finding a funding source for that $1.5 million that wasn't stabilization or borrowing or something else. And again, pending town meeting approval, I'm not saying sort of everything else. So one of those first sources of money to offset the 1.5 was repurposing the $450,000 that was approved by town meeting for the, fill in the choral classroom and the band classroom. Those needs don't go away. I'm just not sure an expert would say that's the first accessibility issue that you need to address. So that was sort of our first thinking. The second thinking, I believe someone mentioned, Chris, it might have been you, that when we got the field feasibility study, there are, $40 million worth of projects. In essence, we had about $1 million, left over in the allotment that we had. We didn't feel we could address fully any other field requests that we had in the feasibility study. So instead of doing something halfway, we felt if we took a pause on the athletic fields maintenance plan, knowing that you're going to see future athletic field requests moving forward, we felt like that roughly $1 million would be better allocated towards the high school feasibility study next so that we could complete that. So if that makes any sense to people, we are essentially coming in at our $2.5 million allotment, getting the repairs that we need, and one athletic field project complete, the baseball field, and providing a funding source for the full high school feasibility study, again, if we reallocate the roughly $500,000 from the warrant article that was approved last year. So that's what I'm going to try to explain to town meeting. And again, I think Paul was happy with that choice because we were going to have a more difficult conversation, not on the $1.5 million need, but on the funding source for that $1.5 million. So instead of having that be a separate article outside of our capital allotment, what I'm asking you now is to approve the, I'm not even sure, I'm going to have to ask for help, approve the withdrawal of one or the reallocation of one and the awarding of the high school feasibility study, and sort of the funding would be from the free cash that the town has set aside for school projects.
Excellent.
Well said. Brad? So two things. So I assume everybody's checked with town council that we can repurpose, that there aren't restrictions on if town meeting has approved money for some purpose, how big of a jump can you take in the nature of the project?
Through the chair, Mr. Bond, we had help from town council writing the warrants. So I guess the answer is yes. We may, I think we're going to try to double check that. I think what we were, we initially had two warrant articles, and we may combine them into one. Possibly, that's what town council said. So there may be language introduced on town meeting floor to the moderator. I think her concern was with 2 articles, if town meeting approves one but not the other, that might cause some issues. And we may present them together, but it's hard to do that at town meeting. So we're still finalizing the language, but town council is involved.
Okay, thank you. And if I may, I'm gonna channel Tom Kilway, Tom, if you're watching. $1.5 million? Are you kidding me? What is, I mean, I know a guy will do it for 10,000. I mean,
I'll do it for 5.
there we go. I just, help me understand.
Again, through the chair, and again, without prompting, again, Mr. Parsons, would you maybe help me answer this question?
Yeah, so we do have a market benchmark because we just went through this process with the Fox Hill School. And $1.5 million was how much it costs. We got the advice of Doran Whittier, who's doing that feasibility study for Fox Hill. My question was why it only costs $1.5 million, frankly, because the scope of the site and of the building and of the educational needs at the high school is much greater than a single elementary school. There's a lot to consider, and frankly, I'm very gratified that we're going to study it and try to prioritize and look at all the various ways that we could approach rebuilding or replacing the high school before we undertake expensive projects, which is the reason to repurpose one of the more expensive ones that a lot of people questioned last year.
So that's wonderful, but are folks getting $1,000 an hour for the work? I mean, it seems, I mean, what could you help put it in context? I mean, is this,
well, I think,
is this 4 months of work for a team? I mean, what is?
So we discussed this in the subcommittee, and I do think we should talk about how to present it. I think we need to explain what happens with these studies, and there's a scripted MSBA, BCA process, and what we get are site studies, and there are a number of them, and there's a full exploration of the economics of, well, first of the needs, of the current status of the building, which is essential for assessing possibilities for renovation. A complete study of how you would approach staging a renovation or even a reconstruction, which would have to, in this case, happen on that site. So because of the limitations on land we have in town and limitations on the site, which include a lot of wetlands, we'd have to take down portions of the building, rebuild other portions, and stage it. There are a lot of different permutations of how we would approach that. So it does add up, and I don't have lots of figures for you off the cuff, but we do have pretty good records that get presented each month for the Fox Hill Building Committee on how the studies are proceeding, where we're spending the money. So we definitely have receipts to explain where that money goes.
So perhaps that's where you start. I'm just trying to think how you explain this to town meeting, and I guess if you've got the different engineering silos and perhaps, you know.
I agree that an explanation of what you get and what you do in those studies is probably quite necessary here.
And if the high school were accepted into the MSBA program, again through the chair, the first thing they would ask us is to fund a feasibility study, and the recommendation that they gave us was to ask town meeting for $1.5 million.
And if I may, I'm sorry to drag this out, but just over the years, we've seen these sorts of studies go from 40,000, 60,000, 80,000 into 6 figures, and then it just seems to continually jump, and maybe it's just a function of the scope of the projects
This is the
we're
biggest,
looking
most
at.
complex project we've tackled in 50 years.
All right. All right.
So I have a question and a comment. So one is with the MSBA process. So for example, if we do fund this and 3 years from now we get accepted into MSBA, how would that affect the process? Are they gonna make us have to go back? Are we gonna have to do an update? I just don't know that information with MSBA.
MSBA will never guarantee anything.
Yep.
But I'm assuming within a certain period of time, they would accept this feasibility study. Our intention is to follow their process, even though we're not in their process. And so my hope is, if we were accepted into it, that they would accept this work and even partially reimburse us for the work that we did. And we're fortunate. I can only look at prior examples. We had replaced the HVAC system at the middle school prior to my being here, and then when we renovated and did the addition at the middle school, I think this community spent about $4 or $5 million on that at the time. MSBA did give us reimbursement for the new system, because I think you guys had sized it for a larger school, so that did work out in our favor. I'm sorry, Bob, you're telling me a 2004 install and a 2011 new school. So they did let some time go by, but again, they'll never put in writing that they would accept anything. So, but again, if we use their process, use the OPMs, the owners project managers that they're approving, which would be the group I would select from, I think we're going to try to track the MSBA process pretty carefully. And again, to Mr. Parsons' point, we're going to be spending lots of money at the high school. I'm not sure I could stand up in front of anyone and say what's more. I mean, we know if the roof leaks, we have to fix the roof, but I'm just saying I don't know. And then Bob has taught me that if we do any major renovation, the HVAC system, we're going to trigger what, the 30-30 rule.
Yep.
Which means we have to bring the building up to code, and then that's all the elevators, that's everything else. So my concern, Mr. Bond, is the studies are very expensive in and of themselves, but they're really an on-ramp to more spending. So don't be surprised, again, when we come back and ask for more money for fields, because we've just studied all of them and all the deficiencies have been highlighted. I'm just hoping to ask you for them in a priority that actually makes sense by someone who knows fields. We do a high school feasibility study. They could recommend, if you want this site, this building to last another 40 or 50 years, we may need to spend several $100 million to do it. And they would tell us they would have to justify different pathways of doing that. A 4-story building in the student parking lot. I could make up a ton of things here. I don't know what's real, but they would help us do that. So it's not only you need to replace this or that, it's a site study. I'm not even sure, has the high school have they done actually a survey of the site in a long time? So again, there's just a lot to do.
And then a
If I
comment.
could just add as well, sorry to interrupt you. This number wasn't pulled out of the air. Not only do we have the reference from the Fox Hill Middle School, but the MSBA website has more than 200 of these references listed on their website, because they're all public projects. So again, it definitely falls in line with other similar projects.
All right, okay, thank you.
Takes money to spend money, right?
And then a comment. So personally, I don't love, from the accessibility and equity, repurposing the music program, the filling in the concrete. I totally understand it, sitting here. I think what really helped me to get my head around all of this is actually having this master plan next to us. And one of my frustration points is not knowing what we don't know. And a new high school could be anywhere from $200 million to $550 million at this point. We need that, 2 elementary schools, a police station, and we're still throwing shots at the dart at what this could cost and what we're going to need between this year and next year. And then we have free cash and we're doing all these projects. So, this I thought was worth its weight. And to be able to know, yeah, we're facing a lot of money just in fields. Okay, and now we can start to better plan next 1, 3, 5, 10 years. So we're not just rushing to find projects when we have free cash. We know what we need to get to. Same thing with the high school. While I was frustrated to see this repurpose, I actually appreciate it now because we'll have a better understanding of things we don't know, like we just saw with Shawsheen, who has a pool that's going to collapse. They have to fix it now. They didn't know that before, So it is in line with what is competitive in the market. I think it's a very important thing for us to start to look at, so we don't get to that point of, hey, there's a hole in the wall and we have to fix that now. It's, hey, there's gonna be a hole in the wall in 2 years, we fix this or fix that. And I think it's gonna be worth it for the town perspective, for us to have a better understanding of where we need to go with this building, because we may not decide we want a full reno of an entire high school. We may want to keep a gym. We may want to keep a part of this because of our numbers that come with enrollment when deciding it through MSBA. So I think with this plan next to us and seeing the value of this, it's going to be a very important thing. So yes, we're going to have to pay, and we're going to then learn where we're going to have to continue to pay. But I think it's better to know that now than continue to guess, is this gonna be 200 million, is this gonna be 500 million? Are we gonna have to do this as a town? Are we gonna get MSBA? There's so many unknowns, this will give us some more knowns.
Second.
Anything further? All right, so this is for Article 30. I'm sorry, Article 29.
Right.
Which is the big part of the Burlington High School feasibility study of $1,050,000. And Doug, are you online now?
Is that 29?
29 is 450,000 for a repurpose.
I'm sorry, what?
It's the 450. The
Repurpose.
29 is the 1 million one, right?
No, 29 is the repurpose.
You're right. You are there. Okay, my apologies. I got them backwards.
I mean, are we gonna have to vote this again?
I could have sworn I had that right, but
He said
okay.
something about doing it on town meeting floor, but.
Okay, so, hold on. Let me just correct the order here.
Anyway, we should vote these, but we may have to vote.
We're voting them separately, and if we happen to vote the same way on both of them, then presumably we would have voted for a combined one also.
Wanna do this? Go to town meeting.
If we vote differently, then we can argue about that. All right, so, okay, I'm sorry. So Article, boy, I copied this from somewhere.
I'm wondering,
Excuse me one moment as I go to the index of articles that I received.
I'll stall while you do that.
Yes, talk amongst yourselves. Tell a joke, Sonia.
Dr. Conti, what do you think when is the point, and I know that this is just a philosophical question, when is the point that we say the SBA may not be, because, right, like, when do you say, like, we're gonna just start trying to fund our project as a community?
$100 at a pop.
3 years ago.
Right, you know, and like, I know we keep saying we'll go to the queue, but if we get this feasibility study, and I think none of us could disagree that the high school needs work, right, and needs to be done, like, when do we decide as a community that we're,
it could be
you know, it's
this.
time to just take care of it ourselves?
Yeah, again, Ms. Rounds through the chair, at a conversation at the subcommittee, I thought, again, Mr. Parsons made a good point where the company we hire to do the feasibility study may help us emphasize certain things to MSBA on a future proposal that may enhance our ability to be selected into the pipeline. I think their main priority tends to be enrollment pressure, and because Burlington High School was built for 2,000 students and now has, under 1,000 students, we keep falling off the list. Every time they visited, they said it's a worthy project, that school needs to be replaced. All the high schools around us have been built and replaced. Lexington is currently in the pipeline. So unless we can find some other lever besides enrollment pressure, that seems to be why we're dropping off. But again, maybe if through the feasibility study they say, the building's sinking, and I'm not saying it is, but I'm just saying maybe they'll come up with some other reason that I'm unaware of that will help us
Because
prioritize.
my memory's vague on this, but was there a moment where it was saying they would do a renovation over a rebuild at Burlington High, or am I remembering a different building?
I think what they said is we didn't fit, they had an accelerated repair program. And some schools, like if their heating and cooling system failed, they could have applied for accelerated repair funding. But because in our case, the accelerated repair would trigger so many other fixes that they really said it wasn't an accelerated repair candidate, and we only would be sort of eligible for the renovation or rebuild program. Their core program, sorry.
On the last question on that is, if money that's spent before you're accepted into being in the pipeline, can the town go back and collect retroactively something that was paid if it's part of what's needed for SBA, for the project itself?
Again, I think we would make that argument. I think they would never tell us they would do that ahead of time.
Yeah.
But again, our intention is to follow their process like we were in their program. So I'm hoping if we do everything that we would have done being in the program and work with project managers who they've already approved and selected, just like we did for Fox Hill, that they would consider reimbursing us for the feasibility work that we've undertaken.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, I apologize for delay there. I'll assume that I just somehow inverted these, and we'll go with the order as described here. So 29 is repurpose the article from Article 718 of the May 2022 town meeting for a feasibility study, and that would be for $450,000. Those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Abstained? Very good. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Doug's
No,
gone.
Yeah,
Oh,
conveniently.
well, that didn't last long. All right.
Conveniently lost
All right,
the
so we do not have to do a roll call. Very good. All right, so that's 11-0-0. And now Article 30, which is the VHS feasibility study
Motion to approve,
for,
Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, yes, I was taking that as a double motion before.
Oh.
All right, do we have a second, just to be on the safe side? Thank you. All right. So it's listed as 1.5 here, but it's 1,050,000. Yes, okay. All right, so that is for 1,050,000. Those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Abstained. That passes 11-0-0 also. All right. Once again, sorry for my confusion there. Article 31, since we have no proponent, no dollar amounts, and no backup, we'll defer, and hopefully that will go away. We'll do that at a later meeting if necessary. All right, which brings us to so I believe that's everything for Burlington Schools. Yes. Thank you very much. Have we forgotten anything before we let you go?
Custodian?
We need to do the operating budget at a later time, so we have to schedule that.
We've deferred the operating budget, which we'll arrange as soon as we get the official. Is the school committee going to re-vote on that, or how's that get done?
We'll probably have to do something.
Okay. If you could just stay in touch with Steve whenever you've.
When is your next meeting? May?
Every week we're here, every Wednesday.
All right.
Just don't go away.
So
We'll get it done before one of your Wednesdays, so.
that would
Okay.
be great. Yeah, just to be clear, our last one will be May 3rd, I want to say.
Yep.
Before town meeting is May 8th, yeah. So
It'll probably-
don't go later than that.
It'll have to be after probably the next school.
Hate to overlook this one. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for all your time.
It'll probably have to be after the next school committee meeting.
What's that?
Or probably it have to be like the first,
It's the May 3rd meeting.
or the last April one.
Are there any?
Okay, we'll try
Yeah.
and give us at least a couple days warning when that's gonna happen so I can post it. Or I'll just post it in every meeting, just to be on the safe
I
side.
think we'll get.
Sure, that will work.
That'll work. All
Yeah,
right.
I will do that.
All right, great. All right, which brings us to the accommodated accounts for our other school assessments. There's the The first is the Essex,
We have not received that information yet.
so we have no number to vote on.
As of like a couple of days ago, still no number. So I will still be following up with John regarding that.
Okay.
Same for
Which
Minuteman.
brings us to Minuteman, and you're saying we don't have a number for that.
Same for Minuteman, so.
No, not yet.
Meeting minutes, Sonia,
Try.
meeting minutes.
Hold that
And you
thought.
have two of them this time.
All right, but the excitement's mounting. All right, let me just make a note here.
And those won't require a lot of discussions.
I hope not. All right, once again, Jennifer Reale has done an excellent job on our minutes. So we have two sets of minutes to discuss. The first is from 2 weeks ago, the March 29th minutes. I didn't receive any feedback on that. Is any feedback now? No? Good, all right.
Motion to approve.
Excellent. Third. Those in favor, raise your hand. All right, are you, yes, or are you?
Abstaining.
You're abstaining, it didn't get to you yet.
Abstaining as well.
Wait a minute, hold on, I have to get the no's first. Any no's? All right, now who would like to abstain? All right, thank you, Brad. All right, so that's Brad and Rob. Hold on, we'll get it
This is
official.
what happens after.
Yeah. All right, hold on, we got one more, don't go anywhere.
It was that 7 minutes
That is
Frank spoke.
9:02. All right, and now the last week's minutes from April 5th. I didn't receive any comments, any now.
Move to approve?
All right, all those in favor? Good, abstain? No? All right, very good. See how I set that up there? All right, so that would be 10:01. Anything else for tonight? All right, just one quick announcement moment here, hold on. All right, next week, so we've completed all the operating accounts. The only remaining accommodated accounts are debt and the two regional schools, and I take that back, we have to do this school operating budget, and the two regional assessments. And next week's agenda is DPW warrant week, so.
Have a snack.
So, yes, that's all, we've got a few of those, so don't plan an early night.
But they're all easy, you just have to approve them.
Yeah. Do we have the backup on that yet, Roger? I'm not sure that I've seen that.
I thought it was on, I'll check. I thought it was on the website.
Oh, if it's on the website, that'd be great.
Yes, they're on the website.
Okay, great. All right, so everyone should go to the website and look at those. And I believe that's everything. We are adjourned.